everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. I'll be hosting once again. Joining me, we've got Josh Torres.
Wowie zowie.
We have Mikhail Mednani.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
And Chow Min Woo.
How's it going?
So Adam is a regular participant. He's just taken the week off. And then, of course, I'm back this week after having taken last week off. So thank you to everyone. And then Josh for stepping in for last week's host position. Seemed like a really fun podcast that I got to miss. I was not at any gaming related event. I was just at a Renaissance fair. So that was just kind of an IRL thing that I did with some friends. Though I will say, at the Renaissance fair, there were some costumes like that made some sense. Like you saw some Geralts, you saw some Links at the Renaissance fair. And for whatever reason, there were baguettes from Claire Obscure Expedition 33 at the Renaissance fair. So they're everywhere. And some of the stage performers were even like, I see some Gustavs in the back seats or whatever. So I guess that's the panache that game kind of has now. I wasn't expecting
kind of developed, it's kind of like penetrate the culture in a way that I guess people wouldn't have expected.
Because it's just a mime outfit, but with like specifically a baguette tied to your back. So it's just it's a very simple outfit. And then as we talk about that, I'll put it stated here up front, just so it's not super buried late in the podcast or in the footnotes. We likely won't record an episode next week. We just have multiple cast members, including myself, stepping out and not available, and we're doing some things on the back end about potentially adjusting how we record the podcast. No promises about what will change and when they'll change, but next week we're just going to take a week off from the Tetracast. We'll be back the week after that, so we're recording this episode on the 2nd. We will likely, unless something changes midweek, not record an episode on the 9th, but we will have another episode recorded on the 16th, probably release the 16th or the 17th. So week off for the participants, and it's a good time of the year for it. At least we'll get the August week off before we ramp back up into September, October releases. So just wanted to have that programming note there.
It'll be our first break, like aside from like the December break that we usually do for like the Game of the Year stuff. This will be our first like break in, like you said earlier, it's like what, 2 to 3 years,
something like that. We've been pretty consistent, and luckily for us next week, unlucky for us this week, is that within the last 7 days, a Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase was announced, and then, of course, executed or shown. So that is the contents of this week, and I'm glad that we were able to record this week to cover that, because if that had happened where everything was shifted a week and we had to skip the week that happened, that could have, been untimely for that sense. So this week's episode will focus mostly, not entirely, but mostly on the news out of that. As always with the Nintendo Direct, it seems like that is the most closely aligned with our site's coverage, both due to the fact that Nintendo has their own, series of RPG staples that tend to get updates or announcements at those. But we always see like Square Enix and other publishers, SaGa, have presence at those showings, especially in a partner showcase where that's kind of like what the format is trying to platform. So if you're listening to this podcast, likely you kind of already know what the headlines are out of the Nintendo Direct, at least the key ones, but we'll discuss them. We'll give our thoughts. We were able to go hands-on on at least one of the key demos from that Direct, and maybe you missed something, and we'll try to cover the big highlights, at least for our site's purview here. But before we get into specifically all the news out of that, we do have a few games that we just want to touch on here in the beginning section here. A little bit of some RPG adjacent, non-RPG sort of discussion here, as we're kind of in a small, rare gap in releases there. I saw that last week you talked about Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers. Of course, that was the big Souls-like releasing last week. But this week, we're going to go off the beaten path a little bit and start out with a title called Dear Me, I Was. This is a game that I don't know much about. I know we first covered it on the site when it was announced not that long ago. It's a smaller little indie project. I'll hand it off to Josh here to kind of tee us up on what is Dear Me, I Was. And I know others have played it as well. But to lead the discussion on that to start out the podcast.
Yeah, Dear Me, I Was first announced during that Arc System Works Direct event that happened several weeks ago. It's developed internally and published by Arc System Works themselves, and a lot of people kind of got on board with it immediately because the art director behind it is Taisuke Kanasaki, who also directed the Another Code game, so it has that lineage going for it. It has a very striking art style, like how the another Code games did, and it is that they were very upfront about it. That there's a way smaller scope game. This is about $8 on the Nintendo eShop US dollars, and it lasts about 35 to 45 minutes overall from beginning to finish. It's like a almost like a kinetic visual novel, a little bit of like very minimal interactions with what you're doing in it, but it is pretty much the story, the life of a woman that you don't exactly know her name. It's not spoken in it. The really striking thing about this game is it's totally unvoiced. There's no text. There's no voices. It is merely scenes that sometimes you interact with very minimally. Like say like you're eating, you press the food on the plate, and then you eat that thing, or you drink whatever is on the
Coffee,
table.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and it's just a very pleasant story with its the triumphant moments, tragedies, um things that have big life changing consequences, and what could have been and what you decided to do. It's just kind of basically a very short but pleasant tale about this woman's life, um like near the beginning to like the later parts of it. I try not to give away too much here, but like the very beginning is like you see her as a child, interacting with her parents, and one of the very big there's the first like 10 minutes of the game here is like maybe 5 minutes really is like her father passes away in it, and then what does that hold for you? Hold for it there. It's a very I think of it as like a very emotionally evocative and efficient game because it is a human story that no matter where you are, no matter what walk of life you come from, where you are in the world, it is a very human story that can be understood because there is no dialogue, there is no voices. There's what you see is what you get, and what you feel from it is what's true for you. Um, that's kind of the basic synopsis of it. I know James and Mikhail here have played it as well. I'll pass it off to James on this one. What he thought about it.
Yeah, it's such a short game, and it's a lot of it is very open to interpretation because there is no text, there is no dialogue. It's all just like watching these vignettes from different portions of this woman's life, and there's parts of it that are very obvious what's going on, and there's stuff that you have to read between the lines, and it's the ending especially, which I can't even begin to talk about. Like, depending on how you interpret it, it really kind of like speaks to the whole game and what it means. And but yeah, it's very it's a beautiful game. It's a beautiful experience. It's $8. If you have a Switch 2, you should play this.
It's a really interesting decision from Arc System Works. Definitely known for their fighting games, known for Guilty Gear, known for their work in other stuff like Grand Blue versus Rising, and their involvement, obviously, with their upcoming Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls. But this is kind of like their statement of like our first console exclusive game for Switch 2 is going to be this way smaller scope game, and it's totally not in what you think about market trends or anything. It is very personal. It is very
it's
touching.
it feels like one of those games that your friends that have the nichest tastes on Steam will be raving about for the next 3 years.
Mikhail, how about you? You got to play this as well.
Yeah, so I actually ended up reviewing it for Nintendo Insider because it was quite a bizarre thing. What happened is like like the price is low and all, and I loved Another Code Recollection, and I was like, I'm gonna buy this whatever happens. And like Brian mentioned, this week was mega busy because there was a Nintendo Direct which I was covering. Then there was the THQ Nordic showcase. There were other games I was like writing about, like Story of Seasons, which we'll get to. So I just assumed I was just gonna buy this and get to it eventually because regardless of how short it is, I have to plan in advance based on how busy the last week was just in general. So I was like, okay, I picked it up on the Japanese eShop because it was going to unlock earlier, and I had bought some other games there like a few hours prior. And I was like, let me download it. I'll boot it up, see how it looks, maybe see how it is in handheld, and then get back to work. Played 2 minutes or something, and that's it. 40 minutes just went by, and I finished it, and I was like, I need to write about this now. So it was that kind of experience for me. Uh, I I did some of my usual stuff where I like look at how it runs and all, and like you might joke about that because this is not the game you do that in, but because this was a Switch 2 only thing, I wanted to try out the mouse controls and stuff, which are kind of bad according to me. But I played the whole game in handheld with touch controls, and I felt it was fantastic. There were some bits, like how you mentioned, where it starts out like when she's a child and you see different stages of life and stuff. There was one moment which stuck with me quite a bit, which was in the middle, because at one point I thought, is the pacing off suddenly? Everything feels like it's just moving too fast. And then there's like a light bulb just went off in my head that this is exactly how life feels right now. Like you just lose months and all with when you're busy with work and you're like deep into something else and you lose track of time, and it kind of just made me think about that. So there were a lot of moments in the story which I won't spoil that made me think about just bits in my own life. And my key takeaway from it is, regardless of what stage you are in life, you don't need to give up on your passion. You can always go back to it. And yeah, there's one more. It's hard to talk about some of the story beats because this is like a full story experience and you don't want to spoil stuff. But the use of the watercolor aesthetic and how
Yeah.
it changes to this monochrome or grayscale thing when there are somber moments, and even how the piano tune, like the soundtrack is mostly just piano, but they add in other instruments in different parts of the story. I just feel like this is the perfect. It's like the experience. You can say that you can just watch this on YouTube, but I feel like even having that little interactivity, it's not a fully passive thing. Even having that just makes it a more personal experience, and being able to do that in handheld mode made it feel like I was reading a very short book, and I just adore everything about it. Like I said, I reviewed it for Nintendo Insider. I gave it a 10 on 10. Like I absolutely do not. I gave it my highest possible recommendation. Just I don't think the mouse controls were well. That's my only complaint with it. So yeah, that's my feel on it right now.
That's the same thing for me. I've had somehow less issues with the mouse controls than other people. I've seen a bunch of people saying that even though the mouse controls work, quote unquote, a lot of folks, they haven't been able to like get the game to confirm anything unless they press the A button instead of the R button. I was able to get it working with the R button just fine. That was not a problem. My problem was the sensitivity for the actual cursor and how it just the dead zone on the movement is just completely off for some reason. So if you're going to play this, I would agree it's probably best to play this in handheld mode so you can use the touchscreen. But yeah, otherwise it's like if they fix that, like I agree, like for what they were trying to do with this game, everything that they did, like it's a very specific type of experience.
Yeah.
And I agree with the idea that it's like for that type of experience, for the story they were trying to tell, realistically they could not have done anything more. If they had made it longer, it would have diluted it. If they had it's a beautiful piece of art that everyone that has a Switch 2 go out and like get it. It's $8. Just
yeah, I wouldn't say don't buy an entire Switch 2 just for this game. If you just want to,
no,
you can watch a playthrough on YouTube. That's totally fine too.
Yeah, that's why I said for everyone who has a Switch 2.
Yeah.
To be clear,
don't buy a Switch 2 for this game. Okay, don't be crazy.
No.
Yeah, but back to Mikhail's point about like I really like how they utilize sound design and color direction in this game, and the way the symphony and relationship they have with each other. Like the soundtrack of this game is a persistent, almost one track, but it is a one track that has a certain motif that evolves over time. Like I think about when people think about the God of War reboot and how the camera choreography of that was all one shot that was constantly moving. There was no cuts in it. I think about this game's the approach to sound design the same way, where there's not really any cuts or like certain like sudden shifts in the music to like a totally different track. It is one persistent motif of a track that begins, and it seamlessly switches to other evolutions of that track. While there are sometimes there are different backing instruments or different um rearrangements that happen during it for certain scenes, but it never loses that central motif and that central theme that it's going for. It doesn't really feel like it's like going from track to track to track. It is one track that is constantly evolving over time to the in response to what the story beats you're experiencing, which I thought was really really cool. It is a game that helps you that once you're immersed, it never really lets you go until the very end. Once you're in, you're definitely in. It's one of those games. It's like it's hard to really stop at any point in that game until you're done with it. And once again, it's like a 35 to 45 minute playthrough, so it's not a long time. So it's
Yeah,
not
I'd
asking
say
for
most
hours.
people, it seems like it's like 40, 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
it literally is a situation where do not sit down to play it unless you're going to do it in one sitting, because it's short enough that you should just do it in one sitting.
Yeah. And after you're done with the game, there's a chapter select if you want to like revisit certain scenes to maybe, see them again or get captures or whatnot, and like a small gallery mode, which I kind of wish there was more to the gallery mode, but I get it.
Yeah.
But it's once again, it's a beautiful game that like you don't really see much of these days in this type of scope, and then of course like with a very very talented staff that has some lineage to some really occult classics, so it's great, it's a pleasant surprise. Whenever people can, once, like you said, James, you have a Switch 2 and want to play like a short but sweet like a small interactive adventure game, this is definitely one to pick up, whether it's now or a discount you want to go even lower. Because I get it, I know the low runtime might be a put off for people, and that's totally understandable too. So, but it was great. I'm glad that this came out. It was announced and came out shortly after it was announced. Did not have to wait too long for it.
Mikhail, did you have one comment?
Yeah, just this one bit in the middle where, so one of the main parts where you quote unquote interact or like you play is when you have to either eat a meal or you have to like put stuff into a box or like unpack. So there's this one section where she was eating either breakfast or lunch, and there was broccoli on the plate, and I absolutely hate broccoli. So I was like, is this going to be like the only thing I don't like about this game? And then I said, okay, but at least she's having coffee, like black coffee. And then the funniest thing happened is when they show the next stage of life, the coffee cup changes and it's the exact same coffee cup I use at home. So that was like the perfect thing, and there was no broccoli. So I was like, yep, this game is perfect now.
For your Nintendo Insider post, did you put broccoli on the table?
No, I would never do that. Ever. That's like you want me to put tea on the table and stuff. Not happening.
But yeah,
I'll do that. I'm a tea lover. I should put some green tea right there.
there you go.
Them
so yeah.
fighting words.
So it's cool. That's pretty much Dear Me, I Was a hot new Switch 2 exclusive.
No, but it seems like the perfect sort of game for someone to, there's not a high barrier of entry other than the fact that you have to have a Switch 2, but in terms of time and cost, for those that they don't play these sorts of games, but hey, I have an hour to experience the story. Let me just see what this is about. The next game we have to talk about is a game that I had not heard of until just before this podcast. It came out on at least Steam just at the very end of July. The title is Earthion. It is a left-to-right shoot-'em-up, and that is all I know. So again, I will hand it back off to Josh to talk about what is Earthion that just released.
Yeah, Earthion is has been in development for several years now. Mainly the main source of info on the development of this game is Yuzo Koshiro's social media, because obviously he's very involved with this game. This game, it comes from the developers at Ancient, which Yuzo Koshiro himself founded back in like I think 1990, and they've been been around for quite a bit. They have worked on Streets of Rage 2, the Sega Genesis version, the SNES version of ActRaiser 2, Genesis version of Streets of Rage 3, you had Beyond Oasis. And they've kind of worked on several projects here and there over the years, but Earthion is like their new side-scroller shmup, very much in the same sort of style as like what you'd see in the Mega Drive. This is actually also released released on Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, along with PC, but it's also got a release on the Sega Genesis as well. Believe it or not. So
I believe the Genesis card is not out yet.
I don't know. Is it
The
out?
console ones are September, and the Genesis thing is early next year or just next year, I believe.
Okay,
It's coming
so
out on
it's just Steam
Genesis,
for
which
now.
is still crazy.
right, yeah. And so right now it's only out on PC, and then those other versions are coming out. Here on after. So yeah, so it's developed in the with those limitations in mind. But it is a crisp, tight 2D side scroll shoot 'em up. It is very what I like about it's very pure in that regard, where you have this life system, which is you have shields, and these shields regenerate after you get hit, and then wait like a few seconds for them to recharge. But if you get hit, like when your shields are down, you're done. And then there's different power ups that you can store up to 2 of them, and then you can like swap them out by picking up another power up. But that sub weapon power up it's not something that you have to really manage. The only other pickup that you can get besides these weapon power ups are these green jewels that are powering your shots and your sub weapons up. And if you get hit, they'll degrade in power along with your shields. But other than that, there's not really much fluff systems wise that you have to think about. It's very, very pure in that regard. You have a main shot, you have a sub shot, and there are some jewels around that you can pick up to power up your shots. And then the way you manage your sub weapons is by picking up other sub weapons to replace those slots that they fill. And they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Like some, have a shot spread, but the individual bullets themselves are lower in firepower, while ones are like the laser cannon. Will have a more powerful punch to them, but they only cover a very limited amount of ground, like maybe like only the horizontal plane in front of you, instead of having a spread shot to them. And everything about it is just fucking gorgeous and beautiful. Pretty much like the cityscapes, the skies. Like I remember like the second level of that game. There's like where the background you're like within the sky and the clouds, and the sky opens up, so you kind of see this like almost event horizon as the clouds split apart, and you see like the kind of like a bright light that almost functions as like a corridor in between the clouds. It just looks absolutely stunning with that, and it's pretty much like, if you like that old school style 2D side scroller shmup in the way that the Mega Drive used to do them. This is almost as good as it gets. Really, they produced something very, very special here, and it's not just all about Yuzo Koshiro as well. One of the mutuals that I follow, VG Densetsu, I just wanted to remind people, like, it's not just about Yuzo Koshiro. It's about other several members at Ancient. For example, Makoto Wada, who joined Ancient 30 years ago. He's the lead graphic designer programmer, and he worked on the Dreamcast version of Streets of Rage 4, Shenmue. This is kind of the culmination of, Ancient's talents and how you produce one of these types of games in the modern day without losing sight of quality of life, convenience. Like I think it's not like a super demanding, challenging game. It's a very pure. It's based on, if you want to 1cc it, obviously you're gonna have to get better and better at it when you're memorizing enemy patterns and what sort of waves of enemies you're gonna deal with. Like there's not any random elements to it. It's all about practice, practice, practice. and there's a bunch of options to tweak with the visuals, like scanline filters, different ways that you want to present the pixels to you. It's all very robust as well. These are people who know, who live and breathe those settings and knows how to convey those in the modern day on modern displays, a lot, as well as people who are going to play these on CRTs as well. And that whole game is filled to the brim with tweaks and settings. Obviously, the OST for it is out of this world. Koshiro, just living legend. Definitely one of his finest works. I can't recommend Earthion enough. If you're a fan of shmups in general, do not miss out on Earthion. It's one hell of a game. I am enjoying it a lot. It is going to be a game I will come back to, much like Devil Blade Reboot. It is a game I will come back to time and time again, just to gradually get better at the game at higher difficulties. Try to 1cc those higher difficulties, and it's a lovely just love letter to the shmups of old. It's amazing.
And
Are
it
you
is
playing it
available on
with, your
Steam for
keyboard?
$12. Sorry, go ahead, Mikhail.
No, I was just gonna say, are you playing it with your keyboard, or are you using a controller or something? Because I've
I'm
just
using a
been playing it
controller,
with my
but
stick.
I'm thinking,
Okay.
I'm thinking about playing it on my stick. I'm just been too lazy to get on my arcade stick, but it's definitely a game that is well suited for that. But right now, I've just been playing it on my controller.
Okay.
And the controls are very simple. Just, hey, do you want to fire main shot, sub shot, or do you want to fire both of them at the same time? And that's pretty much like the core of the gameplay now.
Yeah.
It
It has a good
it's
health system, like
yes,
not something which like I think most people who, when you think of shmups, you just think of bullet hell, and you think
right,
of like one hit and you're dead, and you either get thrown back to some checkpoint, or you just have to like restart or something like that. And here, in a lot of ways, it feels a bit forgiving initially, because you have like your health which reduces. It's not like one hit kill, but then you also have to balance how you use your weapons, because your weapons also have their own power or health or something like that. Like I said, I haven't spent too much time with it, but just initially it feels like it's super hectic right from the start. The bosses are fantastic, the mid bosses are fantastic. Like how some bosses like generate shields and stuff. You have to like break the shield generators and stuff. And you have to like do all of this when it's not a traditional like Danmaku bullet hell experience, but it
yeah,
is like you're constantly barraged with a ton of bullets from enemies while you're collecting those green pickups. You're collecting either weapons, you have like two sub weapons and stuff. I need to like just like I've been hoping to put time into it this weekend, but what I did play, it just felt fantastic. The aesthetic is perfect. The music, I need to buy the soundtrack. I should have bought it yesterday. It was Bandcamp Friday, but I'll still pick it up soon. But yeah, like it's just so good. And I've said this maybe in staff chat or something, but there like this is kind of a tangent, but a few years ago, whenever you had games like this release, which were like technically indies, which had quite a bit of hype behind them, I used to always be like, oh, I gotta wait for the console version, I gotta wait for the Switch port. I had this happen with UFO 50 as well, and now with Earthion. This is one of those times where when they either don't have a console version available or they have it delayed, I'm just like so happy I have a device which I can play this on and I don't need to wait for a port. Absolutely worth it. Fantastic from what I've played. Looking forward to playing. In fact, I might play it tomorrow morning after breakfast. So yeah, like I just really like what I've played. I think Chow has also been playing it, right?
I reached the last level on my second try, I believe. That's kind of like
yeah.
what I played.
But yeah, and there's like 4 difficulty levels, and like those different difficulty levels will affect like how many shields you have, for example, at first. So like if you're starting on the easiest one, you'll get more shields and stuff like that. So you can like use that as the difficulty levels as a way to learn the game gradually at your own pace, and then start like once you're getting a more and more mastery with the game, that you start amping up the levels and start feeling more confident about like, okay, I know the patterns enough to um do a decent run at getting minimal, not getting hit as much and stuff like that. So the game is very, you know, like you said, Mikhail, because of how the health system works and how the way it balances its system. It's not like your traditional bullet hell, like the whole entire screen is filled to the brim with bullets, and there's still a lot of bullets coming out your way, and the way you have to dodge them is pretty thoughtful. Because there are some enemies, for example, like in the third level, there's like this centipede enemy, where it's an enemy that doesn't present a threat itself, but as you're destroying it and during its destruction phase, like bit by bit through its body, it's like spewing out projectiles as it's like kind of destroying itself after you've destroyed it. So you have to be really thoughtful about like it's not only about just the bullets that are coming at me, it's also the enemies that I'm defeating that sometimes they exhibit different behaviors because I've defeated them. Now they're going through this kind of self-destruction process that I also have to be mindful on the screen as well.
I think one of the things that I do find it a little bit different is like most bullet hell games, you just shoot straight at the boss and they're dead, right? I mean, it's the same thing here, but it's like there's a little bit more puzzle element to the boss fights than most shut up games because like for example, like one of the bosses, like you have to wait till its mouth open before you get hurt its weak point, or one of them you have to wait till it detaches itself, then the core shows up. That's the only way you can hurt it. So it's like I feel like the boss elements are a lot more puzzly than most bullet hell games, right? Where you just shoot straight at the boss's face, right?
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely some bosses that are like being in front of them for too long in the same horizontal plane is very dangerous. So you have to think about more angled approaches. Like, do I have the arsenal for a more angled approach to make it safe? But since you're doing it safer, it'll take a bit more time to kill them. So you're thinking about like, if I'm going for a speed kill here, do I want to take a certain sub weapon with me and risk being in front of it more often? Stuff like that as well. So it's a really just fascinating game that I'm glad that it was able to come together after the many years of development. I'm glad it was freaking excellent. I love it.
I also did. I also bought the Darius collection kind of just like a day before Earthion came out.
Yeah.
So that's one of like the horizontal bullet hells where you get a shield, but the shield in that game is more like it only lasts for like 3 hits instead of like here you get
Oh yeah, that's right.
recharges.
Yeah, I kind of remember how. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually love the Darius games. It's hard to like explain it, but it has like this very like ominous story to it, even though it's a bullet hell game where a story is told very thinly, right?
Yeah.
But in those games, you get freaking fish spaceships as your main
really
enemies.
elaborate designs. It's like one of those games that's like it's always I always recommend people to try it out, but it's always like, but if you really want the real Darius experience, you want it like a 21:9 like aspect ratio like that. Yeah, those types of games are really make use of like an ultra widescreen aspect ratio because of the way that the ship designs are. They're very horizontal. They're very elaborate, but to appreciate the whole design, you really need to see it like on an ultra widescreen aspect ratio for that.
Is 21:9? Is that what the ratio is? Because I remember like the first arcade machine with Darius, they put 3 like monitors together to get that horizontal view.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's 21:9, but I don't know if that was the original aspect ratio in arcades originally. It feels like 21:9, but I'm not 100% sure.
That's super wide.
Yeah, it is. Those games are fucking amazing, but they're also like, I respect them for being designed that the way they are, but man, to really get the most out of them, you really want that, like you said, that 3 monitor ultra wide experience. With them, or if you have like just this ultra widescreen monitor that can make use of that, that's like decently sized. So there's also like I know we're getting off tangent here, this is an RPG podcast, but they also released a teaser trailer for that upcoming R-Type Delta remastered. I forgot who was doing that, but that looks fucking amazing too. I think it's like City Connection, I believe.
Oh, I that immediately goes to a wait and see now, because like with City Connection, I need to make sure they don't ship with like 11 or 10 frames of input lag, and they like
that's the thing.
input lag on top and stuff.
It looks really good, but like yeah, City Connection is sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're like, oh man.
I don't know about you, but when I'm playing Earthion, I feel like there's some input lag. Sometimes I just feel like my ship is moving very floaty for some reason.
Apparently, there's some like differences in input lag depending on the controller you use. I've heard.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, I just used my Steam Deck, or I used the stick, which was also wired. I haven't used wireless, so I don't know if that's causing something. But it felt fine to me on the deck and with my stick. So
Yeah.
weird.
Okay, hopefully they get that ironed. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because like a lot of times I feel like I died because of like my ship just moving not the way I want it to move. Right? It's like why are you just? It's like my ship just zoomed in this way. And I'm like, oh shit. Like,
yeah, but right now we're like in a pretty I don't know if it's a golden era, but we're in a pretty healthy state of like new shmups and also like remastered re-release shops as well. It's like it's a good mix of like old and new coming out that are all pretty interesting. Well done.
Isn't
Pikmin when they
Gradius coming out
ported.
in a few days as well?
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there's also a
Yeah,
new
Gradius.
R type. Isn't there a new R type somewhere?
Yeah, the R type. There's also gonna be like an R type tactics like remastered thing, like 1 and 2 Cosmos. I don't. Those aren't shmups. Those are more like strategy games, more
Yeah,
so than shmups. Which
but I
is
think
cool.
it speaks. I think it speaks for how good shmups in general are doing. That NIS America is like localizing this spin-off, like not even in the same genre, but just because it has art type in the name, that should just speak for how good these things are doing in general. And yeah, Gradius is out in like 4 days or 3.5 days as of this recording, and I
Yeah,
have
that's a good
pre-ordered it
collection of
on Steam.
games. Yeah.
I'm excited. I buy anything M2 Short Triggers does, like easy. So yeah.
Yeah, speaking of M2, like they also released like a trailer for Night Striker Gear several weeks ago, and that looks freaking incredible. I was like, holy crap, that's exciting. That's so exciting.
It's a good time to be into shmups.
Yeah.
And I did misspeak earlier. It is $20, not 12. I just said the wrong two number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, on Steam right now and coming to multiple consoles, including Mega Drive, later down the line. And then the third game, this is probably the most topical game out of the initial list, but also kind of has a caveat behind it, is that East 10, Proud Nordics, did release in Japan on July 31st, so a couple days ago at the time of recording. Switch 2 for now, though it is getting a Japanese, I believe, Steam and PlayStation port through Clouded Leopard, at least through Steam. But again, the Asian version, not anything localized, nothing's changed there. But James has been playing through Proud Nordics. I think it's just been James at this point. Playing through Proud Nordics. Go ahead.
Mikhail's played a little bit of it, but you've been mostly focused on the specifically the performance aspects, right?
Yeah. I've skipped all the story stuff until I get to chapter 5, which should be tomorrow. But yeah, like it's all you right now.
Yeah.
Right, so we'll hand it off to James, and then like Mikhail will be able to chime in on things that he's noticed with the performance. But yeah, as kind of inferred by that last little piece of dialogue, is that we talked about, leading up to the release in Japan, about exactly where the new content slides in. It's something that you can like tap in and out of parallel to the main story. Turns out chapter 5 is kind of that branching point. But the person that can go best onto that is James, because you have firsthand experience playing through Proud Nordics. So just give us, some of the general deets about how Proud Nordics plays, compare just obviously the Switch 2 experience, how it plays and feels compared to the base game, and anything else that is worth, shouting out for the re-release.
Okay, so I want to specify first for a lot of 99% of people that played East 8 in the West played the PS4 version or a version of the game based off the PS4 version of that game. And the reason I mention that is that when East 8 first came out in Japan, it came out on the Vita, and it was a fairly different game from what we ended up playing when it came out in the West, because the PS4 version added a bunch to the game. Obviously, it looked better, it ran better, but it also added in new content. It completely overhauled like Donna's segments of the game. It added in new post-game stuff. It added in new like gameplay content, not even tied to Donna's segments. It was a massive glow up. And as much as I loved Ease 8 when I played it on Vita originally, it was definitely one of those games where after you see what they added to that game with the later re-release, it really kind of made the gaps and the deficiencies with that original Vita release that much more obvious. I say that because that's been a bit of a trend with the East series since, where because 8 got that expanded re-release when games like 9 and 10 came out, people were hoping for those games to get the same sort of expanded re-release that 8 did. Obviously, 9 never did. Can still cope that it might get one in the future. Probably not, but we can still cope. East 10 Proud Nordics is that expanded re-release for East 10, much like the PS4 release of Ease 8 was for the original like Vita version of Ease 8 all the way back in 2017. So it's not so much just the new content. And to be clear, the way the new content is structured is there is a massive island that didn't have a name really in the first release of East 10, but there was like this massive island, this massive land mass in the first segment of the Obelia Gulf that you could not dock, you could not make landfall on because it was a very rocky island and there was just no place to like drop anchor and like make land. So what they do in Proud Nordics is that they find an excuse for you to go on that island, and that island is massive. I've only done the first segment of it, but I've seen about 18% of the eastern segment of the island, and my first visit took me a little bit more than an hour because you have the overworld segments, and then you also have like a dungeon aspect. So that gives you an idea. 18%, 1 hour for one segment of the island, because the map that I have currently seen specifies that I'm on the eastern segment of the island, which implies there's at least one more, possibly even more than that, beyond what I'm exploring on this section of it. The way it works is that it's very East 9 coded in terms of level design, where a lot of your exploration is kind of gated by the abilities you get. Like in East 9, that was the different gifts you got from party members joining your party. The way it works in Proud Nordics is it's based off of, I don't know the exact terminology Nisa used for it in the Western release, but the antiques that you can get in East 10. That includes the mana string. I forget the exact name of the item you pick up for that. The mana string, the monocle that lets you see invisible stuff for a period of time, the Grimble board, and so on and so forth. That also includes the charge attacks, which have the elemental properties that East 10 uses at the very beginning of the game, then kind of forgets that they exist for most of the runtime and doesn't really do anything with. So when you first get to the island, obviously, since we already said it starts in Chapter 5, there's a lot of the island that you cannot really visit until you go back, get more antiques, and actually can explore further. So like you see all of these different segments, like you see the Raven statue, which you could use in the original East 10 to kind of separate Adel and Karja and explore separately. You see one of those, which makes it clear, oh, you can't do anything with this until you've seen this in the regular game. You also see things where you can use the mana string to pull stuff, but you don't really get access to that until later in the game, and so on and so forth. So it's much more wide open. The level design, immediately you can tell this would not run on a regular Switch. No way in hell. This would probably struggle to run on a PS4. It's very clear that what Falcom's doing with Proud Nordics is that the reason why it's currently exclusive to Switch 2 is because that's what they want the baseline for the experience to be. They want this to be something that could only feasibly run on something at least as powerful as a Switch 2, and that includes obviously the Proud Nordic segments. But one thing that is nice, before I talk about some of the gameplay quality of life changes, is that obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast, one thing that I've been worried about for a couple of months now is I was very concerned that this game was only going to be 30 FPS because the trailers they released for it were 30 FPS, whereas the trailers for the original East 10 were 60. That was I wouldn't say it was an unfounded concern, because with all the information I had, it was a reasonable worry. But in the end, at a minimum, East 10 Proud Nordics on Switch 2 runs at 60 FPS, and there is a performance mode that targets 120 FPS, which is, for most of the game, really, really nice. It mostly hits that 120 FPS target. I will say right now, the new content, unless you're inside in a dungeon, that 120 FPS is a suggestion, not anywhere near that.
What would you say like the average frame rate is? Like, is it still like above 60 or below 60?
It's hard to say. I think it's probably a CPU limitation. I would still keep it at the performance mode because the visual, because it's a CPU limitation, the visuals still look fairly nice. It still looks around 1080p most of the time. Like, the way I'd say it is that if you're in any of the content that's not exclusive to Proud Nordics, the game looks at least as good, definitely a little bit better than the original Switch 1 version, but at 4 times the frame rate, which is insane. Like, this is probably the most impressive upgrade from a Switch 1 game to a Switch 2 game so far. It's not even close. But yeah, so there's that. The quality mode does look better. I'd say it's probably like around 1440p 60 most of the time. I don't know if Mikhail can kind of vouch for that. That's my read on the situation anyways. So that's pretty nice. Obviously in handheld mode, it looks very, very nice. For whatever reason, the resolution seems to be... I wouldn't say, obviously it's not higher in handheld mode, but the percentage of the target resolution in handheld versus docked, it seems like the handheld mode, it doesn't drop in resolution and performance mode as much as I would have expected for handheld mode, which is surprising, but a good surprise. Before I talk about some of the quality of life changes that impacts the base game that's not directly tied to the new content, Mikhail, is there anything you want to say about the performance from what you've gathered, since this is your forte?
Yeah, sure. So back in October, I think it was when it released, like when East and Nordics released in the West on PC, PS4, PS5, and Switch. I played every version of it. And I had already played the Japanese version of East 10 again without knowing Japanese, because like for some reason it's just become a thing where I buy the Ease games over there. I got Ease 9 as well, and that was a mistake because not only was that super story heavy, but that was frankly dog shit on PS4 like for a while until it got patched and until PS4 Pro. But yeah, back to Proud Nordics. When they said there's going to be a 120 FPS performance mode, I was like, sure, like, sure, Jan or GIF. Like, I didn't believe that was going to be possible, because so far most of the third party ports I've played have all been like disappointing in some way, or it's just like the 60 FPS, which they say is like either for the UI or it's just a target and stuff. But yeah, like you said, Falcom like killed it over here. Like, it's a fantastic port so far, especially in handheld mode, because you have VRR, so the 120 FPS, the drop in resolution is noticeable, but it's absolutely worth it for how smooth it feels. No complaints so far in handheld, but I haven't gotten to the new content yet. I will say that I haven't like pixel counted. I don't pixel count, but just going by eye, it feels like the performance mode docked is not 1080p, but it feels like maybe
it's definitely
800-ish.
dynamic. It's definitely dynamic resolution. There's some instances where it's probably 1080p, but
that's a good shout. It's probably dynamic, because for the moments I was looking at and comparing it with the obviously the PS5 version is not fair because that was like native 4K. This one is not native 4K even in the quality mode. Although it does seem like there are other differences which I will look into more closely.
There's
with
lighting differences,
with textures. The LOD is not as good as it is on PS4, but it's not terrible. But this is like, there's one thing I've learned with Falcom games. If you want the best visual experience with like super high draw distance, you need to wait for a PH3 version on PC. You're just not getting that on console, even on like PS5 and stuff, because like, I don't know if you played Ease 9's PS5 version, which was done by Engine Software, but the draw distance was like abysmal over there. Also, it felt like I was playing Dragon's Dogma 1 on Switch. Like, it was embarrassing.
I've heard from multiple people that have since the PS5 versions of Cold Steel 3 and 4 have come out, they have avoided them because those were also Engine Software, and I've heard that they use the Switch version of those games as the base for the PS5 version, and because of that, there has been some issues.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it felt like it was either just the PS4 version with some slight tweaks to it, but not much. Like with I think Ease 10, sorry, not Ease 10, Ease 8's PS5 version had a 1080 120 FPS performance mode. If you forced your screen to 1080p, this was not a toggle or anything.
Yeah.
Ease 9's PS5 version was frankly just not needed at all because you couldn't do much. I still think that game is like better on Steam Deck than it is on every console, which is kind of a bad showing for the port quality. And just to like bring up my interview with Durante for Trails Through Daybreak, when I asked him what he thought of the Switch 2 hardware and whether he would potentially do Ease 8 and Ease 9 on Switch 2, and obviously he doesn't make those decisions, and he said it's up to the publisher, but he said he did want to deliver the definitive or like a good portable version of Ease 8 on console, because that does not exist right now. You have the Vita version, which is super ambitious. Both James and I love what we did with that, what we experienced over there. It's not a version you'd recommend right now. The Switch version is not a version you'd recommend right now. So your only option to play Ease 8 on a portable and have a good experience right now is Steam Deck. That's not a console. So yeah, like technically it could be something there. Going back to Ease 10, I can't wait to see how the new content is, because I've seen bits of it through your stream on Twitch. I want to like experience it for myself. I will say that so far I've praised Cyberpunk just because it's Cyberpunk, but I still think No Man's Sky is the most impressive handheld port, and I would put East and Proud Nordics alongside No Man's Sky now for like the best handheld upgrade over Switch 1 so far.
Yeah. But yeah, like we kind of talked about it a little bit, that there are some like changes to the graphics, and you really do see it in the new content. For one thing, there's a dynamic lighting system that they use for like the first new dungeon in the new content, where it's like, hey, we remember that Adol's charge attack can do fire. Light these like cisterns or whatever, it's like the like lantern, like bonfire things that you see in like dungeons. I think it's cistern. I think. I'm an English major. I'm sorry, but yeah. So there's like lighting there that it makes use of. That it's like, oh, that's something that you could not have seen in East 10 original, because that was a game that was designed from the ground up to run on a Switch 1. Same thing, like I said, with the level design, where it's like East 9 had this overly ambitious level design, especially with the main city, that maybe was too much for the base PS4 to handle, especially that CPU. And obviously, because East 10 had to run on a Switch, the level design was a lot more linear, a lot more hallways. And while I was generally fine with it for the more arcadey feel to the islands, I did kind of miss some of that level design. And I'm glad to see that it's back in Proud Nordics with the new stuff. That's very appreciated. As for the quality of life changes, first off, they completely overhauled sailing to a significant degree.
This is like the first time my ears are like perking up. I'm like, oh, I'm listening, because that was a thing in the base game that didn't work for me.
If you look at some screenshots of the sailing in East 10 Proud Nordics, you'll probably notice like the way that naval battles were showcased in East 10 was there was like pillars of like pinkish red light that if you ran into, it would start a battle encounter. In East 10 Proud Nordics, there are like every region of the Abelia Gulf, there's like at least a dozen golden naval battles that you can run into, where if you beat them, it spawns a new wind current permanently on the map. Which means, like, obviously, like the number of wind currents in the first zone was like, I'd say like 4 or 5, not that many. So imagine you quadruple the amount of wind currents, and suddenly the main issue, especially early on with the sailing, where it's like it's too slow to get everywhere, it's like unwieldy, it feels like absolutely mind-numbing going from point A to point B until you get all of the fast travel points. Suddenly, that's not an issue, because you have so many wind currents you can constantly boost, and obviously the wind currents themselves also make you go at top speed before boosting anyways, and suddenly the sailing, it's no longer a problem.
But how about the battle gameplay? Do they like tune up, like fine balance something? I don't know, maybe nerf something? I don't know. Do they touch that?
The what battles?
Just the battle system, do they like tune it
Naval
up or
battles?
like?
The naval battles themselves aren't really different, but I don't think the naval battles were really the problem in the first place. I think it really was just down to sailing from point A to point B, especially early on. Like by the end of the game, I don't think it was so much of an issue once you had the upgrades. But at the beginning of the game, they chose the worst first impression because they had this wide open area, probably like the second widest segments of the ocean map. And it's the first one you use, but your ship is so fucking slow. You have one mana sail charge, and it's like just grueling to get from point A to point B. So the
I heard
fact
that one of the complaints though on the base version was like that early game just battles in general was just like even speed aside, it's just like kind of whatever.
There's some other issues too, like the raid battles is boring. It's like 10 minutes of a slog fest. That's one of the issues I have.
I never agree with that. I thought the naval like raid battles were fine. I actually enjoyed them, but I understand that some people didn't like them. But like the main concern I did see everyone share was that the sailing, especially in the early game, was too slow and it was grueling in that sense. And the changes they've made to the wind currents makes that a non-issue. They've made it so that there's arguably too many wind currents, but that's better than the alternative.
I do wonder like how many like people are gonna go back for Proud Nordics after playing the base version, like to justify their playthrough, especially because I know for people that I know, they're like, we're probably not gonna play. I'm not gonna play that because like unless we can like transfer over our ship upgrades from our original, because they just hated everything about the ship, and like if we have to upgrade the ship again, hell no, you know, that not starter.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird situation where I kind of said in the staff chat as I've been going through this, but the new content really does feel balanced around the idea of you've already beat the game, not in terms of levels, but in terms of complexity and like the challenge. Like the level scaling is appropriate for like each section of the island as you visit it, as you get access to the antiques. So that's not really what I mean by scaling. But like the first boss fight in the new content feels, at least as far as I remember, the final boss of the base game feeling around that level of like difficulty and like attack complexity. And I've been streaming my playthrough, and I know that at least one other person that was watching me had the same feeling. So it's one of those situations where if you're playing this for the first time, I do wonder how that discrepancy in the difficulty is going to impact people. And I do wonder how many people are actually going to go back to East 10 after the base game, which East 10's a good game, but it absolutely has a number of pretty significant issues that Proud Nordics does fix to a degree. But it's still too early for me to say just how much of the new content like changes matters, because it seems like, well, there are a few things like quality of life features aside, there's also like these new enemies that can spawn that have like a purplish red glow to them that have a bunch of HP, but if you defeat them, you get this crystal that can be used to upgrade your SP skills. And the way that skill upgrades work now is that there's not just, oh, here's the base level and then you master it, which obviously has some improvements, and as you master some skills, you get access to new ones. That was how it worked in East 10. That's how it's worked in most of the party system East games. They've changed that where you don't immediately master a skill, but rather there's different mastery levels to them. So they keep getting stronger and stronger, which I guess is their idea of how do we have a further progression system outside of the level curve for the base game for the new content. I'm assuming that's what they decided to go with. Which is neat. It's another little wrinkle and whatnot. There's also this sand that you can get that you can use to upgrade your antiques. Again, another form of progression, especially since the antiques are such a major part of the new content. It makes sense. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what else, because I do know there's also going to be like Grimble board races. That's another thing that they said is new to the game. I do wonder what else there is. I was like, until we got to the new content on the stream, I was kind of doing like some of the side quests off camera because I wanted to just focus on the story and the new content. But from here on out, I can't really do that because if it's like Ys 8, which it really feels like it is in terms of how the new content is integrated, we're gonna see more and more stuff integrated even into the original side of the game that's like new content there. So I can't just like do side content off stream, because the whole reason I'm streaming it is I want people to be able to actually see what the new content is. So it feels like I've started to finally see, okay, here's what Proud Nordics is doing, here's what it's changing up. But I am curious, like I said, the new island seems like it's a significant portion of the game, probably like at least 10 hours of new content, which is, again, significant. But beyond that, there is new stuff outside of that, but how impactful that is yet to be seen.
Is this also full priced as well, or is it cheaper than the base release?
It is full price, but I think that's fair considering it is like a pretty significant like performance upgrade, and it has all of this new content and whatnot. So it's like, if it was just a late port, I would be upset if it was full price. But because it does have this, like, even just if it was just the new island, that's a pretty significant amount of new content. So I'd be like, yeah, fine, whatever, full price. That's okay.
I don't know if it's reasonable. If I paid $60 for a base East 10 and then they want me to pay $60 again for Proud Nordics after playing East 10, I don't know. I'm thinking it from that perspective of like, I would feel kind of burned and like, I'll just wait for it like maybe $20.
Yeah,
that's my perspective.
It has the cosmetics included, but not the consumables. But then Falcom game consumable DLC is such a scam, because if you want it easier, just play on easy mode. Like, I don't understand why anyone would buy that stuff.
Yeah, that's another good point, is it also does come with a bunch of the cosmetic DLC and even some new stuff from the base game. So it's you're also getting that stuff too, which I think is something that you should consider when you're talking about the metrics. But I don't necessarily agree with the idea of it's not fair for this to be full price when they've put so much effort into the port. It's very clearly not just like a rush job. There's new content, a significant amount of new content that's fully voiced. It's like,
I would be interested for people to conduct, or for someone to conduct a survey for people who paid full price on East 10 and then say, hey, are you willing to pay full price day one for Proud Nordics?
I will say that it's not quite fair for the Western side of the equation, because East 10 came out in Japan September 2023. So it's almost been 2 years. So a lot of the people like that bought East 10 in the West, just a few weeks later, they got burnt because Proud Nordics was announced.
That's kind of the underlying thing across all these conversations, unfortunately, for this podcast.
So yeah. I mean, I'm just looking for like the average consumer's perspective, right?
And also, there's one more thing to say, is that, like, so for people who played East 10 Nordics on PS5 and on PC, we don't know what sort of upgrade visually is even going to be there, if at all. Like, PS5, if they do a PS5 version, it might be 120 FPS instead of 60. But like, this kind of reminds me of SMT5, or like even how P5R was handled. Like, like you bought P5 and then you have P5R full price release, still have like $50 of DLC on the same console. It still like runs the same. It looks a bit better, but you didn't get much out of it. But if you waited and got it on a new platform like years later, like I think 2022, you got like a massive upgrade with all DLC included. I think like what James said, for people in Japan, 2023 Switch 1, the upgrade you're getting on Switch 2 over there is like just massive in every way, so it justifies that. But for people who played it on Steam and for people who played it on PS5, if there are versions like those coming to the West, we don't know if the upgrades are going to be there to justify for the people who paid full price, or maybe even more, because I just checked the eShop before we recorded. I can upgrade my East 10 to the Ultimate Edition of East 10 for $75 on top of the base game price. So now imagine if someone paid for that and they have to pay $60 and it still won't include all the DLC for East 10 Proud Nordics over there. So like, there's like a different, depending on what platform you bought East 10 on and when you bought it, I think the value and what price you're paying it basically, how much you're going to get out of it will vary. So whether it's worth it or not, it remains to be seen. But I think for Switch 1 to Switch 2 in Japan, like, I haven't even played more than 2 hours of it probably, and I am satisfied with my purchase already. Like I bought it digitally, but then I'm a clown who owns East 10, like, and I've bought East 10 like 4 times or something. So like, I'm not the person to make this call for
I think
anyone
that, yeah, I
else.
think even for like the once again the average consumer perspective, because there's already like considering that like they bought it, they put the money for a Switch 2 as well. So now like now they have to pay full price again for a Switch 2 version of the game. So there's like not even an upgrade path. It's not even like, hey, you got the base version of this. Pay like $20 if you want like the new version, upgraded version of that as
I
well.
think
And,
at the
Atlas is an result of this as well. Like I don't like what Atlas does either. Like I endlessly criticize Atlas for doing these practices as well. Like I was not happy when they did Persona 5 Royale. I did not like when they did this SD5 Vengeance, especially for Switch people who bought the base version SMT5. Like I'm not absolving Atlas from anything. Like I always try to like I always advocate for fairness for consumers in regards to this.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying that people are wrong for feeling like it's not worth full price. I'm just saying, like, looking at it, what it changes, what it adds, and the upgrades specifically for the Switch 2 version versus the Switch 1 version, I do think it's fair, at least from Falcom's angle, to charge full price. And again, I can't speak to other people. I can't speak for how they feel about it. That's going to have to be something that you figure out for yourself. And there's no wrong answer in that sense, because like value is literally in the eyes of the consumer, that sort of thing. I'm just saying that I do not think them charging full price is egregious for what they've added. That's all.
My personal stake, just for a personal anecdote, is that I am like I had the same posture when Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance came out. I played Shin Megami Tensei 5 on a Switch with all of its warts, and especially in terms of its performance. And then when Vengeance came out, I'm like, you know what? I enjoyed most of the experience. A lot of the updated stuff does seem significant, but it's not significant enough for me to, not just the money cost, but the time cost, like to play through it again. And I'm kind of same on East 10 Nordics. So what my personal, like, I'm interested to see you get to like the quote unquote post game or whatever, because I'm not interested in myself playing through that, but I am curious to see like what they've added, what they've changed. Because if I remember right, like the hardest challenge in base East 10 was kind of a rather generic monster on an island who was max level. Wasn't really any story context behind him. And I'm not saying there should or shouldn't be, but I'm just curious, like, all right, did they add anything beyond that, or what's the hardest challenge on the new island?
Curious. So I haven't gone to it, but they have said that there is like an end game dungeon thing that's interesting, because it's like timed, where it's like when you go into it, it's like you have to expend resources in it to keep the timer up or something like that. I'm very curious how that ends up. But there is now like an end game dungeon thing. And there's like a whole system there's a whole thing about it. I'm very curious how that feels in practice.
I forgot to ask, if you have a save file from the original Yeast 10, and I don't know, let's say a clear game save, does that give you any benefits when you start this game?
So I'm glad you asked. You cannot transfer regular saves over, but literally like 2 days before the game came out, Falcom confirmed that if you had clear data for East 10 on Switch 1, you could load that clear data when starting a new game on Proud Nordics.
What does that get you?
I don't know, because I did not play East 10 on Switch. I played it on PS5.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm assuming it's just...
Would it basically be like you're starting out on New Game Plus kind of thing?
I assume that's what it means, yes.
I'd like if... Does that mean like all your ship upgrades transfer over? I guess that'll be the big thing for people. Right?
I remember the ship upgrade resets on New Game Plus, so it's not one of those things that transferred over. But you have all this equipment and gear or materials in your next playthrough. Like I remember one of the things is that you don't even get to transfer the materials for the strongest upgrade, so you have to like regrind and do all the side quests properly to get them again. So, but at least that's what I remember. I rolled a guide on East 10.
On a full load. Are you gonna update it?
So. I don't know. I'm gonna ask someone else to do this. I don't want to dive through like 130 hours just to find like some 2 hours bonus content. I don't know. I'm kind of with Josh here. I don't think the $60
it's way more than 2 hours of bonus content. I need to be like absolutely clear. I visited the island one time already. It was like an hour and a half going by how much time I streamed it, and per the map, I had only explored 18% of one section of the island, and there's at least one more. It's way more than 2 hours of content. I want to be clear, it's a significant amount of new content, and it's especially if you were someone that did not like how the base game's level design was very linear. That's not how the new content is. Whether or not that's worth playing through the game again and picking up a separate version of the game, again, that's up to you. But it is a significant amount of content. Let's not undersell it.
Well, like I said, I'm very interested to see how many people are willing to return. I mean, for people first time like me and never played their base use time, because I got one of the 5 prod Nordics before. Like I didn't pick it up on release, and waiting a week before making that purchase paid off, because that's when they announced Proud Nordics.
Oh, I didn't realize you never grabbed the original.
Nope, I didn't fall for. I'm not gonna say the scam, but you know.
Not scam. I mean,
it's not a scam. It's just unfortunate timing.
Yeah.
It's just that when you release it so soon, everyone's just
I'd be way more disappointed. I'd be way more disappointed if I spent $60 on that base release. And
like I said, to be clear, if I had played the Western version of East 10, I would have been fucking really upset.
That's why I'm thinking about it from like the people who I've spoken with who actually played that game and then like got notified of this, and like how they feel. Like a lot of people in the West are still very bitter about how Falcom handled this, especially with the timing of when they announced it and everything, and how Nisa was put in an unfortunate spot between a rock and a hard place.
It reminds me of what happened with Tokyo Xanadu, but unfortunately, unlike that, Axis, it took them longer to release that game. So when they announced Tokyo Xanadu, like a week later, they announced, like Falcom announced EX Plus. So they were able to confirm, we're also working on EX Plus. We're also working on EX Plus before they released the original Tokyo Xanadu. So people weren't upset then, but that was because it took Axis longer. So when Falcom released the new version, Axis was able to account for that. Nisa, for better or worse, released East 10 quicker than like Ease 8 or like obviously Axis with Tokyo Xanadu. So when that new version got announced, I mean, they just got screwed over because they did it. It still took them over a year, but that was still too quick. and Falcom then announced the version literally a week later that pissed everyone off. It just sucks. It sucks, genuinely.
I was just gonna say, I know Mikhail wants to say something, but I just want to say, like, I wrote a guide for this. It had like 300,000 views, and as soon as they announced Proud, views just dropped to like only like 10 a day or 100. It just like the views for that guy just died when they announced Proud.
That's probably what happened to Nisa's sales long tail as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I know many people that's like, I mean, we don't even need to speculate. It just makes fucking sense. Like, if you did not pick up East 10's Western release at launch, you did not buy that game, because within a week, you knew, oh, there's a better, newer version that's coming out in Japan in like less than a year. I'll just wait. And that sucks for Nisa, because it's like they didn't control that, but they got screwed over.
Okay, so I want to ask you, what do you think of the new music that they've added?
It's really good. It's really good.
I saw so when I was going to buy the thing, I was considering getting it physically because it had a soundtrack. I don't know if the soundtrack which comes with the pre-order thing on Amazon Japan is the full new soundtrack.
It's the full new soundtrack.
Oh, it is? Okay, so that's good. But I just gave up and I just bought it because like I'm an idiot. But yeah, like I'm surprised that since Falcom had that, they haven't put it up for streaming or digital purchase yet.
So here's the thing that's really fucked up. If you go to Falcom's like own like web store and you look at the details for Proud Nordics, they explicitly say we have no plans to release this separately.
I mean, maybe this is one of those like we have no plans to release Trails in the Sky first chapter on other platforms, and then like it just releases.
It might be a thing where they release it on streaming services, but they never sell it separately. So once it gets up on streaming, that's what I'm assuming. That's what I'm assuming is that probably within like 6 months, you know what they'll probably do is when the other versions of Proud Nordics come out, PS5 and PC is my assumption, probably not PS4. probably to kind of coincide with that, they'll release the additional music on streaming services. That would be my assumption.
Okay. That makes sense. If they want to like get marketing together, like synergy and whatever.
Yeah. Again, an assumption, but it would make sense. So, but yeah, I've been enjoying Proud Nordics. I completely understand the people that are upset about the whole situation with the base version and how the timing for that kind of was very unfortunate for the West. And again, I also feel for Nisa, who undoubtedly lost a lot of sales because of that. If you haven't played East 10, obviously, this is the version you're going to want to play. And I can tell you at least the Switch 2 version is very good, and you will have, realistically, if all you have is a Switch 2, as unrealistic as that is, it's a very, very good version to play. And I assume that whatever, like PS5's PC version will also be very, very good. I'm still very early on in new content, but what I've seen so far in terms of the scope and in terms of what it's doing for mechanics and how interesting it is for like dungeon design and the new music and the new boss fights, I'm excited. I really did enjoy East 9 despite all the issues I had with it. So seeing some more East that kind of has some of that feel to it is quite appreciated.
Now, I'll live through you vicariously, like for when you get to the end of the stuff, to see how the package like all wraps up at the very end.
Now, Kondo, if you want to do a re-release of a previous East game that people aren't really going to be upset about getting a new release, you teased some ideas you guys had for an expanded version of East 9, and you've said that you're slowing down with Trails because you want to have each game give each game enough time in the oven. You still could go back and release an upgraded version of East 9. You could.
Yeah.
But they won't.
They need to partner up with like, I don't know who it would be, but they need to make a new East versus Trails fighting game, like an actual fighting game,
Yeah.
not a party game, and like partner with like a real fighting game developer for it. Arxis is doing too much already. I'd say like who's the Under Night Inverse people, French bread. Yeah, go partner up with them.
I would love them to work with them, but I don't know. They're just, too niche of a company to do projects like that. I don't know.
Niche.
Come on, look at the Under Night. Like, when you try to play Under Night online, if you want to look for matches, you literally need to go to their Discord to find matches.
You're not wrong, but
that's why I'm saying they're a little bit too niche.
I want them to branch out and like not do re-releases as much and like do new games, but not are like full-fledged 80+ hour RPGs like Oath and Felghana length, but like, and maybe just like genres they don't usually do.
Where's a Brandish 2 remake, Falcom? Yeah. You can market it on it's Toby Fox's favorite game. That's not a joke. Listen to the final boss theme of Brandish 2, the Planet Buster, and try not to imagine a very angry skeleton.
Where's a PC port of Brandish the Dark Revenant from Exceed? Like, while we're on that topic.
No, honestly, I don't know. They probably have to negotiate with Falcom.
They're making enough money off of Story of Seasons and Daemon X Machina and like stuff like what's that rice game? Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. They don't need to do Falcom games anymore unless Falcom comes to them specifically and says, "Do you want to release this?" They're not going to go out of their way to release Falcom stuff. So,
like a Marvel and Capcom situation right now. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think that covers it for the games we've been playing section of the podcast. Normally we'd go into articles at this point before going into news, but we're going to kind of mesh the two together because a lot of the articles and news kind of both came out of the announcements of the Nintendo Direct. So we'll go into like the news, and I tried to put it in an order that was like new announcement versus we were expecting this versus update for a previous announcement, vaguely, not necessarily like line for line. And then we'll go into a few of the articles that came out of that as we go through. Probably the single biggest section of news that came out of the Nintendo Direct is just Square Enix ports or new projects in general. So I have like a Square Enix section here that will kind of talk about all those related topics first. Then just kind of anything else coming out of that partner Direct for the Switch 2. And then we'll go into other headlines outside of the Nintendo Direct for the back half of the news section. So to start out here, we're going to go with a new IP that Square Enix announced at the Nintendo Direct. And it is the title, The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. A little bit of a mouthful, but that's what it is. At least it was not called Philabieldia. That's what some people were worried based on the trailer. So what this
they
is...
sell cream cheese too?
We'll go into that. But yeah, the trailer, obviously, before we knew the title drop, was shown by Square Enix. So a new project using the HD 2D engine, which we know is Unreal, but that's how they tagline that specific style of engine. You know, Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, all of those. An isometric action game, which has drawn comparisons to titles like Zelda, Ys, and SaGa. So that's kind of the difference there. Not turn-based, not strategy, but more of an action game. So we had the announcement trailer for it. Square Enix then followed up with more screenshots and details. And then most critically, what we'll just kind of start out with, is they made a demo available. So I do know that I believe Josh and James have both played through the demo, so you'll get some direct, feedback about what this game is and how it plays. But one last thing I do want to say is, obviously with all these Square Enix HD 2D properties, one of my first questions is like, who's working on this? Because it seems like Square Enix kind of has like a mercenary group of developers that they go to for these properties. This one is Clay Techworks and Square Enix Team Asano, but Clay Techworks was the team that did Bravely Default 2. So I think this is Clay Techworks' first time with an HD 2D game. And it's also not a turn-based game, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But they're the team that has been tapped to make The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tales. But to start out, or to continue, I'll hand it off to Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. Josh, you played through the demo. Obviously, I kind of gave the details as presented by the publisher, but firsthand, what is this game like? How did you feel about it? And then we'll obviously tag in James's opinions as well.
I guess I have to remind myself, this is not a Switch 2 exclusive. The demo is, but not the game.
Yeah.
That full game itself is coming to
Right.
other platforms as well. So this, I didn't know what to expect going into this, as you mentioned, and I do like what they do with this. After you complete that demo, they show the staff, like the Square Enix's Creative Studio 5. I guess the Asano team is now known as Creative Studio 5.
Yeah, they have their own neat little like shield emblem logo that you see at the end of the demo. I really like that. It's like, oh, yeah.
It's the Clay Techworks. And there, aside from the Philabieldia world name, this game has an interesting setup of like, just at the demo of like, you get before it introduces the two main characters, Elliot, your playable character, and Faye, his fairy companion. There's like other NPCs that you get introduced to that kind of pissed me off the same way that Philabieldia way, and the same that their names are like off. Like the king's name is Hitchard, as in it's Richard, but with an H. And it's like, okay. Then like his daughter is like Huria, like Heuria. I'm like, okay. And then the next character you get to is like Eugene, but it's Euygne. I'm like, what is going on with the naming scheme of like everything except your two main characters' name? Man, like I'm already losing it.
I'm just gonna ask, like, did anyone play in Japanese? Is it like just a pun, or is this like a spin on localization?
I played it in English because I was streaming it to some friends, and I was like, okay, guys, I heard that the English dub is kind of off, so we can play Japanese. And they're like, no, let's play in English. I'm like, okay.
I think the English dub itself is fine. Like from what I heard, I think it was fine. But
it's okay. But like Faye, for example, is like kind of drives me nuts a little. But it's okay. I'm not gonna say it's great, but it's okay. So, and it's a very basic setup of the demo of like, hey, we needed an adventure to go out to this and like kind of scope out the land and all that stuff. So your three basic things that you have on you is your sword, your bow and arrow, and your bombs. And so you get out of this castle. And you go down to like the this town marketplace section, and before you go out and venture into the wilderness to the west, you can go hit up a shop, and you can go hit up like this magicite sort of thing. So the magicite system is neat because they're basically power ups in the sense that like you slot in it's kind of weird. You use a currency that you put into an NPC, and this NPC is like the way it's introduced, like it's almost like a magic lamp, but with a cat like laying on top of it. And you're basically I don't know if it's like pure RNG gotcha or not when you put in the magicite currency, or if it's like actually uh, there's a algorithmic like or linear way you get these new magicite. But anyway, you use this currency, and like it'll spit out like charge time minus 20% for like your charged attacks on your sword, or linked attacks for your bow and arrows. And that means that if your arrow hits an enemy, any other enemy that's like near them gets hit as well. Just very, very like small but like meaningful upgrades in that sense of like you can slot these in and you have like a cost limit. So each of these magicite abilities that you get, like this charge time reduction and the linked attacks to your bow and arrow, they all have like some will cost like 4, some will cost like 6, and you have like a limit of like 20 or 25 that you can equip at once. So you can mix and match however much you want as long as you're within this magicite cap limit. So that's kind of like your supplemental upgrade system to the equipment that you have on this, and then you get more magicite currency as you play throughout the demo, and find like new magicite stuff there as well, and stuff like that. And you can buy consumables in the shop as well. The menus are kind of look weird at first. I kind of hope they kind of touch it up a little, because it does go for that sketchbooky notepad sort of like feel, where a lot of the menus are like on this parchment paper, and it's sort of like journal notes.
Yeah, the way the inventory menu works is it's like very diegetic. It's very like physical, and I do like that. I do think there's like some small tweaks they could make to make it a little bit more readable, and I think that comes down to the positioning of like the icons let you know which segment you're in. And that's one of the things I did also mention in the survey, is I said that the way that the radial menu works feels a bit off. It feels like you should be able to use the D-pad to switch between your categories and then use the analog stick to choose. That should at least be an option, because the way that it works now is you use the triggers to switch between the different ones, and that doesn't feel very intuitive. So hopefully at least as an option to swap that out, I think would be good. But I like the way the menus look. One thing I really, really like is the way the map works is incredible. It's like a 3D. It's very much like Donkey Kong Bonanza.
I was thinking about Donkey Kong Bonanza as well with the map.
And I don't know how much of the side content you did in the game. If you did the optional dungeon that's in like the south of the demo.
Yeah,
and like I don't know if you read what I said in the preview or the impressions, but I do really like how you can see details in that 3D map that gives you an idea of, so there's a lot of like dropping down and going between different like levels in that dungeon, which could be very easy to make frustrating. But the 3D map, you can actually see where piles of sand are. It's like, this is where you drop down, because you can see the sand. And it's like, man, this map really does make this dungeon from what would otherwise be frustrating to something that's actually really delightful.
Yeah, so when you're venturing out in the wilderness, like when you pop up the map, it's sort of like that zoom out map of like almost like a diorama model, like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and you kind of get a sense of like, okay, I can go beeline to the objective. There's the blue objective flag, or I can go explore around, because there's sort of like a fog of war cloud around some of like the zones, and I'm like, you wonder like, hey, can I go over to this zone? So you kind of follow the route there, and it's like, okay, once you reach there, you'll uncover the fog of war there, and you'll start seeing like treasure chest icons, or maybe like a weapon icon, or maybe like a shrine, like a life shrine icon. And like these shrines are just like mini challenges to kind of raise the upper cap, max cap of your life crystals, your HP there, and they can range from like battle gauntlets to like avoid obstacles to platforming challenges and so forth. So they're just like mini challenges to kind of get that stuff. It doesn't take too long. And exploring the map along with the creatures is very like a Zelda-esque, and as James mentioned, like there will be some like explorable zones and like kind of mini like dungeons that you come across too along the way. And your fairy companion Faye has abilities with her that you can utilize. Like there's two abilities that you can switch between with her. One allows you to like glide around really fast. And that these both work. This works on a meter, so like you can't glide around forever. There's like a circular meter that you have to wait to refill up if you expend it. And then you also have one that's interesting where you can manually control Faye with the right analog stick. Um, and there's an ability where you can teleport to her position. So if there's like a platform that you want to cross that you can't get over with a jump, yeah, you'll want to like position Faye over this to the other landmass and then use that ability to immediately teleport to her. She also double functions as a flashlight as well because there's like a glow around her. So sometimes like in a dungeon, if it's dark, you kind of want to have Faye go on ahead of you. There's like little mini commands of like, "Hey Faye, go on ahead a little bit of me," or like "Stay here" or whatnot. And like for those darker sections of the dungeon, you can actually say, "Hey Faye, go in front of me. You'll be like my flashlight." Um, in that instance, which is interesting, and I am interested to see what other powers Faye gets in the full game because there's a lot of potential with that. But you know, the combat is pretty simple. Yeah, your sword, like I said, has a charge attack, and it does have like different charges. Like the longer you hold the charge, the more powerful attack you get. There's a different sword or sword upgrade that you get in the demo that allows it to like get another charge, and so it has like a more powerful shockwave sword slash that you can like do. Your bow and arrows pretty explanatory. Um, the there's not like a manual lock on or there's not a lock on button. You have to like to manually face them, which is a little bit awkward in the way that like how the game presents itself. So I do wonder if they're gonna how people feel on like the lack of an auto lock on in this one because you do have to manually position like your character's model towards the enemies if you want that to hit. And then you also have your bombs, which is your basic bomb of like, hey, there's a cracked wall, put a bomb here. You can pick up the bombs, and they'll be useful for like taking out some obstacles. Like say there's like an obstacle that's like sucking in stuff that could suck up your fairy. It's like, oh no, you want to pick up that bomb and throw it into that like suction and to blow up that um obstacle, and that's also a central mechanic in like the end boss fight in this demo as well, which kind of marries those mechanics together. Um, and whatnot. There's like a parry option, which is like kind of if you block right before the incoming attack hits, you can kind of parry it. It'll kind of stun the enemy. You can attack them, um, and so forth. So it's simple but effective. I'd say in that regard.
Yeah, I do feel like, and I said this in the article, I don't think you do need to necessarily do anything to change the melee combat. I think the simpleness is effective.
Yeah.
The only thing I think they need to do is they need to make it so that every time you do a melee attack, alternating swipes, the animation comes from a different side. I think that's literally all you need to do to make make it feel a bit more satisfying. Like that's like the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really liked the boss fights in it. I liked the one in the optional dungeon, which is about the same size as the main dungeon in the game, in the demo, which is impressive. The dungeons feel pretty good. I like the puzzles. Like none of the ones that are in the game are like super like confusing, but they're satisfying. And especially considering like previous Team Asano games, the dungeons have maybe been like a weak point, and it feels like these are simple enough that they're not confusing, but also there's enough going on where they're engaging. And I hope that stays the same going forward. The boss fight's really good. The main boss fight, Lord of the Maw, genuinely one of the best like boss fights I've seen in a 2D like Zelda style game.
It was a really cool boss fight. I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, so I'm super excited for this. I'm locked in. It's like the one thing I thought of once I finished the demo is like, man, I wish Echoes of Wisdom scratched that 2D Zelda itch that I was like looking for.
This one seems to more than that, oddly enough.
Yeah, that was my exact thought. It's like, yeah, this is more along the speeds of what I wanted. And it's like, I mean, if Square Enix is going to give it to me, and already it seems to be in a pretty good spot, and the stuff that they need to fix is very much stuff you can fix within within the time frame of whenever this game is going to release, even if it's like early next year. So yeah, I'm excited.
It was a little bit of bummer. I get it, but like because of the demo, I wish that like they unlocked the graphical options. Like you could have messed around with like any of the graphical toggles. There's some graphical toggles along with it. You did have to live with like the overbearing depth of field and the vignette effect. So I was like, come on.
Yeah, the way the depth of field works is very different from what I've seen in previous games. It's not even so much a pixelization. It's like blotchy, but it feels like it's intentional. It's weird.
Yeah, I kind of want to get rid of it. I want to see what it looks like without it and without the vignette.
Yeah, I'll get rid of the vignette. I think the depth of field, since it's different, I'm fine with. And I think the performance and visuals on Switch 2 are fine. There's some like loading stutter that I think that will probably get better with the full release. But it's like, yeah, this looks good. It plays good. It's very obvious, at least to me, the reason why it's not on last gen is they want to ensure that every version of this game is targeting 60 FPS, which is the right decision for an action game. That makes sense.
This one has a 30 FPS mode, though. I don't know if you saw that.
Where?
So when you play docked, at least I don't know if it was in handheld also, but when you play docked and go into the settings, it's not on the title screen, but it's when you're in game, there's a performance or graphics priority or something. And I think it's not fully implemented because the visuals didn't look much different to me. It still has the shimmering when you're walking around and stuff. But I don't know, like it wasn't. I thought I'll touch on this when I talk about Dragon Quest 3 in a bit, though.
Yeah, I'm glad that they made the right decision to default to the performance mode because it looks fine as it is, and this is absolutely the type of game where you want it to be 60 FPS. So giving the option for people to choose the raw experience is good. But kudos to Square Enix for making the right decision to not force me to go into the settings to set it to 60 FPS like every other developer on the face of the earth.
Like SaGa specifically with Sonic Shadow Generations. Like
yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is a nice surprise. It was good for them to get out of demo immediately and like have that demo feedback survey. I mean, like when the developers do this, like Team Ninja does this all the time, like their Neo games. I love it when I just kind of wish it was a more widespread practice all around. We see more of it these days than before, but I kind of wish there was still more people did it. But it's cool. It's cool. It was a great surprise. Very positive first impressions of it. There, like I said, there are things that can be touched up upon it, but they have very ample time to get around to it because it's still releasing sometime next year for all platforms, pretty much all modern platforms. So this is cool. That's also the name is not the most marketable name. Obviously, The Adventures of Elliot: The Millennium Tales. Okay.
I've seen some people complain about the title, and yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's like, dude, this is one of the most popular fucking game series of all time is The Legend of Zelda, and this is very clearly meant to be evocative of that. So, I mean...
I know. But
remember when Octopath Traveler went from Project Octopath Traveler, and people were like,
yeah,
they'll change the name, they'll make it something more streamlined, and they're like, the final name of Project Octopath Traveler is now Octopath Traveler.
Same thing with Project Triangle Strategy.
Yeah. So. That one was like, they're definitely going to change this one, right? It can't just be called Triangle Strategy.
Yeah. But yeah, I do think the people that are complaining about the title, just think of The Legend of Zelda, The Adventures of Elliot. Compare the two and understand that Adventures of Elliot, they're calling an action RPG, but it is a Zelda-like. It is very clearly...
People have a more, people have a bigger affinity towards Zelda than a total newcomer. So yeah. I get it. I get it.
It's just like one of those things where it's like, when you think about it that way, it's like, it's not that weird, guys. Just get over yourselves.
It's not.
I still think it's
like
rude.
I
still think it's rude.
Yeah. It's not the biggest, thing about the game.
I mean, also like Clear Obscure Expedition 33 is a mouthful. Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon is a mouthful. There you go.
It's okay to have like good games with like unconventional weird names. Like not to say that like, oh, it actively bothers you. It's like, but it's okay to think it's like, oh, that's a bit odd,
Yeah,
it's a bit odd. But yeah, we kind of touched on all these things. But yep, a new IP from Square Enix announced at the Nintendo Direct demo on Switch 2, but coming out at some point in 2026 for Switch 2, Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and PC. So the current generation of consoles across the console manufacturers. And then in a similar vein, like the iconic announcements 1A and 1B, this is also an announcement that I think there was some scuttlebutt about before the announcement, but nothing confirmed, just a lot of rumors. And that was that Square Enix announced another HD 2D project, and this one is Octopath Traveler 0, announced for PlayStation 5 and 4, Xbox Switch, Switch 2, and PC. This one does have a release date, December 4th. So this one, is coming out within half a year. And then Octopath Traveler 0, of course, a prequel. What is it? So set in the same world as Octopath Traveler 1 specifically, or Stera. And then, of course, I have the details of this kind of buttoned up in my little notes here, but I have not played the game. That is the necessary game to talk about here. So I'm going to hand it over again to Josh, just because you can give it a little bit more hands-on. Octopath Traveler 0 borrows a lot from the mobile game Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. I believe you played that?
Yeah, I did. So when I saw this game, I'm like, I was wondering, it's like, okay, how is this related to Octopath Traveler: Champions of the Continent? That's the mobile game that's still in service in Japan, also in the West, but it got handed over to another company away from Square Enix on that end.
Can we talk about how, like, in retrospect, how scummy that was that Square Enix sold them the rights to this when they knew they were going to be releasing this?
I mean, look, man, that whole business is, I have no idea what their business deal is like, because it's still running in Japan. It's not by Square Enix themselves. So it's not like, that whole thing is shut down. It's like, no, they just barely announced their new summer units in Japan and it's still being run by Square Enix internally. So I don't know exactly how the whole ordeal is going up, because I don't know how that game is being operated these days. But when I first saw the trailer for Octopath Traveler 0, the two things that stuck out of my mind is like, hey, this has the 8-party member system from Champions of the Continent, where there's up to 8 characters can go into battle, and they're separated by front row and back row. And
from Champions of the Continent, and for people that finished Octopath Traveler 2, the final boss fight of Octopath Traveler 2.
Yeah. But when Octopath Traveler 2 was first announced, I was like, man, I really wish they had this battle system, like they. Because I prefer the 8 character 2-row battle system over the mainline games. I know Octopath Traveler 2 did it at the very end, but it was
kind of like a climax gimmick sort of thing.
Right. It was a neat stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool. And also the thing that also stuck out to me is like Octopath Traveler 0 has a very big emphasis on like town rebuilding in that game. And I was like, oh, this is like kind of the Nameless Town village restoration system that was also in Champions of the Continent, because there's also an element mode in a Champions of the Continent where you restore a town as well. So like, I was like, okay, so are they like just bringing just the on-fly version of the mobile game wholesale, or what's going on? And the way that Square Enix themselves describe it on their blog for this, because there was like a FAQ, and then they answered like the question, how does this game relate to Champions of the Continent? And they say Octopath Traveler 0 is inspired by story elements and gameplay ideas from that game, but it's a new entry that's designed as a full-fledged console and PC RPG. It takes the story from the mobile release and reworks it to add a new story content and streamlines the overall story for a more compelling experience that's more in line with like how you would present this in like a home title. It has a new script with new narrative elements, new backstories for the playable characters, and full voice acting in that regard. So it's not like copy and paste. It's more like a rework, reimagining. But it does take like that first major story arc from the game, which is like the very beginning of Champions of the Continent up to the Bestower of All, which is like a big moment, narrative moment in that game, and there's 3 key main villains at the beginning of Champions of the Continent that you can see in the trailer. So it's like, okay, yeah, they have, because the most important characters, oddly enough, in Champions of the Continent is these 3 villains, because unlike the mainline Octopath Traveler games that focus on the 8 stories of the main characters. And Champions of the Continent, it's divided into 3 stories that both focus on the villains themselves. So you're going through the arc of the villain and the consequences of their actions on society and and civilization, rather than the stories of the main characters and their journey. So
The Thanos kind of arc.
kind of. I mean, sort of. But in Octopath Traveler 0, it doesn't seem like they're doing that 3 route split. They're kind of streamlining it more in the sense that there's 2 storylines, because there was a producer letter that came out in tandem with Octopath Traveler 0 that clarified more of its relationship with Champions of the Continent, where in Octopath Traveler 0 there's a more relaxed sort of route where you can go on the storyline to rebuild your town. Obviously, the setup for it is pretty sad and tragic, where this town has been burned down, got raided, pillaged, and so forth, and now you're working to restore it and try to get residents back and trying to get its facilities back up and running. And then there's also there's a second story route you can choose to go down in Octopath Traveler 0 that's more of that villain focus, trying to get into the bottom of like, who are these villains, what is their goals, and digging to the bottom of that. So that's how they're dividing up that game. They said there should be over 30 playable characters in this game. I don't know. They said they're not going to have any of like the gacha game characters, but I don't know to what extent, because there are original characters that were introduced in the Champions of the Continent mobile game via the gacha that do have narrative purpose in that game. But also you have your crossover collab Square Enix characters, like your Automata characters, Bravely Default 2 characters, Dragon Quest characters, and so forth, that they do have in-house collabs with other Square Enix properties in that game. I can't imagine any of that collab stuff is going to come into this game, but for the original Octopath characters that were introduced through the gacha in that game, like, does that mean that they're completely out? I don't know. They're kind of being more coy about that stuff. I kind of hope they don't gut that entire cast, because some of them are quite likable and, are interesting. So a lot of that has yet to kind of be unraveled, because they just announced this game. They showed off some of the characters already in this game, along with like your main character that you can create. And yeah, I mean that's kind of our first look into this. It does, bigger picture wise, it does bring into question, like, is this indicative of Square Enix's strategy moving forward for reusing assets from their mobile games into like full-fledged home consoles? Like I saw you, James, and many others say, like, does this mean that they're working on like a near reincarnation version of this, where they get the assets from that near reincarnation mobile game that's now end of service, in all territories, and are they reworking that into a home title, which would make sense, because that game is, whether people like it or not, Near Reincarnation is Year 3. That it has.
I've never played that.
It is very, very important to like the universe of Nier.
Yeah, I've not played it, but I do know people that did. And when that Nier Orchestra happened, which was also like a stealth sequel to Automata, like straight up, that was the format that they like showcased the orchestras, as like a play-by-play like sound novel, pretty much. People said that there was direct references to reincarnation in there, and I was like, crazy, I would never have known. So hopefully this happens. I have a pretty good feeling it will. Because if you're doing something like this, if I was Square, why would I not? It's an easy way to pad the calendar. I am curious, though, if we're going to get some of the later stuff from Champions of the Continent, because I do know that there was an update that added in the world of Octopath 2, right?
Yeah. I think they're doing Up to the Bestower of All, which is like right before that second arc, if I believe. But the first arc is pretty meaty already. Like it's hours upon hours.
I wonder if they'll release an expansion for it, because the assumption I have is part of the reason why they're doing this is the content exists. It makes sense to do it, but also Octopath 3 probably won't be if they're making it, which I assume they are because Octopath is a successful series for them. And Claytech Works is working on Adventures of Elliot, so that kind of brings into question, okay, what is the bulk of Team Masano working on? And then, so I assume Octopath 3 is probably in development, but probably not released until like late 2027, 2028. So this makes a lot of sense to release now because people remember, oh, Octopath Traveler exists. I know, for example, like a lot of people that didn't play the mobile game, myself included, will play this and probably have a great time because I've heard nothing but good things about the story of Champions of the Continent. And it seems like you said, they're reworking gameplay elements. I've seen people like going into details about how even like the maps are better suited for a console PC game versus the railroaded structure of the mobile game. So that's cool. That's really neat. Releasing this now, like at the end of the year, so that when the next mainline Octopath comes out, people will remember it. I think that's very smart. If that's what they're doing, all kudos to Square Enix. More stuff like this, genuinely.
What do you want to say, Mikhail?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is this using so far? Is this using music just from Champions of the Continent?
From what I heard, I don't remember exactly, but from what I heard so far, it is using Chance of the Continent music. Which let me be clear, that's not a bad
fantastic.
thing. It
No,
is
it's really
some
good.
of Nishi's finest work. Yeah,
It's really good. No, I was just curious whether they were doing anything new because I know there's a Break Boost and Beyond Volume 3, which is I'm not buying
Exclusive to
that.
the limited edition
Yeah,
for now.
I'm not buying Square Enix's store exclusive junk. Like, I'm done. I think the last time I did that was Final Fantasy X HD, the collector's edition on PS3, I think, which had the soundtrack on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I'm not buying from their store ever again. But yeah,
the fact that they said that they'll probably release it later, that tells me, okay, TGS 2026, I will pick up a copy of that signed because they're inevitably going to do that. I'm just not going to buy that limited edition. It's $220 when they've already said we'll probably release this separately.
Yeah.
It's like, that tells me they're going to do that signed thing because every year they have a signed Octopath Traveler something OST at their TGS booth. So it's obvious they'll do that eventually. I'll just wait for that.
Yeah, you got me the Octopath 2 thing. Thank you again for that.
Yeah.
I still have that next to me. Okay, the second thing I want to know is, so not really a question, but I noticed in our article which Adam did on the like new screenshots and details, there's a thing on save data bonus from prior games in this. And there's one thing I noticed. So you get like some statue or something for Octopath 1. You get another statue or something for Octopath 2. I assume this is for your base stuff or whatever. And then there are bonuses for Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake, Dragon Quest 1-2 HD 2D Remake, and Bravely Default Final Fantasy HD Remastered. Now, this is just on Switch 2, but everything else is on like every other platform as well. So this tells me that is Square Enix going to have a save data bonus exclusive to Switch 2, or is Bravely Default going to be ported by the time this comes out? Like,
I have to imagine that Bravely Default Flying Fairy Ichi Remastered was always going to be a timed exclusive.
It is.
So
it is. Like, their wording says so, but it's just that I kind of was wondering whether we'd have to wait till next year, or this is like, is it like, I just feel like it's going to be sooner. Like, maybe this is going to be all speculation, obviously, but this might be a TGS thing. Like, oh, Bravely Default is now coming to everything, including the Switch one, because there was no reason it shouldn't be on Switch 1. So, yeah.
And to be clear, the save data bonuses for the non-Octopath games are incredibly minor. I think, Mikhail, you're just using it as a launching point for porting.
Yeah, of course. It's just some in-game, like some items or something.
Like, if you have the HD remat, they're like one fortifiing nut.
They're like potions. They're like potions in RPG, pretty much.
One high potion for having Dragon Quest 3. But the ones for Octopath Traveler, you get the statues that you place, which says slightly increases EXP or JP when placed. So probably my guess is not crazy, impactful, but obviously more so than a single high potion.
Right. So. Also, it's just like it's just a fun it's like a fun collectathon thing. It's like if you. There just be some people like, I want to get everything from my town, so like I'm not missing out on anything to like decorate my town as well. There'll be some aspect of that.
When I first saw the announcement, my main thought was, hell yeah, another project for if not the best in the biz, one of the best in the biz, Yasunori Nishiki. Like hell yeah, like more tracks from that guy. I will play anything. One other thing.
Speaking
Go
of
ahead.
that, just sorry, a quick aside.
No worries.
He's not the main composer for Adventures of Elliot.
Right.
Oh yeah, who? Right, because he's on this probably. Or,
Yeah.
no,
Let me
I
go
mean not
check.
probably for sure.
I took a screenshot
Probably
of the.
Probably Octopath 3 or whatever the next like proper Team Asano game is. It doesn't seem to be a problem because like what we've heard of Adventures of Elliot, that's a good soundtrack. So I mean,
Yeah, I want to be clear. The composer for Adventures Elliot is Tomohiro Nakamichi and Yuto Moritani, and then in parentheses from Imagine Co Limited.
yeah.
So.
Again, so far the soundtrack for Adventures of Elliot is up to the standard of Team Asano. Do not worry about that. But it's interesting that he's not on that, which obviously he's working on something. So very curious what that will be. I'm assuming Octopath 3. Please be Octopath 3.
I don't know if we said this, but the developer outside of Square Enix that was tagged for Octopath Traveler 0 is Doki Doki Grooveworks, which is the various Daylife team. But again, they're borrowing from Champions of the Continent, which I don't know who the team from that was. So in terms of new original porting, the distribution of the work done will be a little bit hidden unless they provide information for us to see. But yeah, Doki Doki Grooveworks and Square Enix working on Octopath Traveler 0. And that wasn't it for Square Enix at the Nintendo Direct. It wasn't even it for Square Enix at the Nintendo Direct for HD2D stuff, because of course we got updates for both Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD2D Remake. That game we already knew was coming out, of course, on October 30th. And then the recently released Dragon Quest 3 HD2D Remake. So I'm bundling these together here a little bit. So we got a new trailer for Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD2D Remake, followed by some newsletters from Square Enix about some of the details of that release. But I'll touch on Dragon Quest 3 HD2D Remake first. It got a free Nintendo Switch 2 compatibility update, not a Nintendo Switch 2 version, but just kind of similar to what we saw with, I believe, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, where it got an update specifically so that if you have the Switch version of that game and you play it on a Switch 2, you're getting the best bang for your buck.
That's not,
is that not
quite
right?
What did it? Yeah, no, it's more like the upgrade patches for like stuff like Echoes of Wisdom, like Captain Toad, Super Mario Odyssey, that sort of thing, where it's like it is very clearly running native Switch 2 code, but it's like a patch that only really works on Switch 2 versus Switch 1. It's not like a separate like DLC you have to buy, which is fascinating. We're starting to see more developers do that. Like you even see that with never not an RPG, but it was announced at the partner showcase. Sparking Zero is coming to Switch and Switch 2, and while the physical Switch 2 game is a key card, the Switch 1 game also gets one of those free upgrade patches to upgrade to a Switch 2 version. I don't know if it's the same Switch 2 version or if it's a separate SKU, but...
Wait, I think Sparking Zero, specifically the Switch 1 version, is like a massive downgrade over what the Switch 2 version is. So they'd have to like really replace all the files and stuff to get to where the Switch 2
which is why I'm curious. That's a whole nother can of worms. I'm curious if that's a separate port or if that is the same SKU and it's just downloading all the details. Because depending on how that is, if it's the latter, where it's just downloading all the stuff for the Switch 2 version, yet people could say, oh, then it might as well be a key card. But it's like, there's any data that you can run on a Switch 1 on that game card. I think most people would prefer that. So...
But the main thing I was getting at is that it's not a Switch 2 edition. So sorry if I said the details wrong. There's like two levels of gray area between a Switch 1 game running on Switch 2 versus a compatibility update versus a Switch 2 edition versus stuff in between those tiers.
Yeah, it's just overcomplicated and all that sort of nonsense. It's very unfortunate that that's the way it is, and hopefully things even out to something like, again, like the Sparking Zero or this, where it's a patch, and then optionally, if you want to get a Switch 2 thing on your shelf, it's either an actual game card or it's a key card. But as long as cross-gen's going on, I think stuff like this and Sparking Zero is probably the best move. So hopefully we see more of that in the near future.
Any other final comments on Dragon Quest 3? Otherwise, I'll go into 1 and 2, of course, which is the upcoming game.
No, I can... should I just talk about the patch right now?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so So basically, a few weeks ago, or maybe longer, I don't even remember. I've lost track of time. I did a thing on every Dragon Quest game, Switch game tested on Switch 2, and I mentioned what I'd like to see in potential upgrades or patches. And because Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD Remake are getting a Switch 2 like a native version, I said maybe Square Enix should do something like that for Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake, because one thing I've noticed over the last, like since 2018 when Octopath came out, HD 2D's aesthetic, when it's not like native resolution, it can look kind of ugly, or it can look acceptable if it's not crisp enough. Some games are fine on the Switch, I get used to them. Some games look ugly. When I played when you play these games on a Switch 2 screen, you're going from like games which were running at maybe 500, 600p upscale to 1080p. That aesthetic does not like look good enough to me on that screen. So Dragon Quest 3, it really like looked worse than it should on the Switch 2 screen when you play the Switch 1 version. But the load times were massively improved even without a patch. So that was like a good sign for people who bought it there and have sold their Switch 1. With the Switch 2 compatibility update, they've done quite a bit, because the download for the update is bigger than the whole Switch 1 game. So they've pushed out a lot into that. You now have access to a new graphics option which lets you prioritize graphics or performance. Performance will like aim for 60 FPS. It seemed to like hold it well. I didn't notice major drops or anything, but it runs at a lower resolution than, so it's like less than 1080p handheld and way less than 1440p docked from what I can tell. But this is like quite a bit above what the Switch 1 did. So even if you play in performance mode, you're getting a better visual experience than Switch 1. If you play in the graphics mode, you're getting like a native, almost, or like properly native but 30 FPS experience. So for a free update, very much appreciated. I kind of would have hoped we could, like, since this is a Switch 1 game, I kind of hoped it could do like native res and 60 FPS. But apparently, I've heard, like, I haven't played the PS5 version yet. I have the disc. I should like test that. I've heard that the PS5 and Series X versions do not do native 4K 60 for Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. So maybe that explains that the game is just heavier than
That
it
makes
should
sense, because I remember that when people were playing Octopath 2 on PS5, people said play the PS4 version, because the PS5 version was native 4K, but it had frequent drops from 60 FPS.
Oh, I don't remember having any drops, but maybe I was playing on 1440. I don't know if that made a difference to that, or maybe there was a graphics and performance mode.
Yeah.
I'll have to like check this out, because like that was a while ago. But yeah, I remember that there was no maybe I'm confusing it with Octopath 1, because Octopath 1 is like locked 60 when I played it on PS5.
Yeah, probably Octopath 1, yeah.
Okay, so maybe it was just 2 because 2 is visually more impressive than 1 for sure. But yeah, so Dragon Quest 3 free patch is like very welcome. I hope Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD Remake is like delivers better than what we got in a free patch for 3. But yeah, like that's...
They did release some footage of it on Switch 2 on YouTube, and what I saw looked pretty good. I don't know if it was native 4K 60, but it was definitely a higher resolution 60 FPS, and it looked pretty good. So
yeah, so basically Dragon Quest 3, like I updated my big back compat article to cover, and yeah, just one thing to be clear: if you have the Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake before the Switch 2 update, it already loaded much faster. So the new update did not change that. So yeah, just that.
And speaking of Dragon Quest 1 and 2, yeah, we're gonna go to Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD. So this game, obviously, we had the date of October 30th. I believe we knew that from earlier this year. I'm trying to see when we got that. We got that back in May. Back when they announced the Switch 2 version alongside. It's also releasing on PS5, wait, is it PS4 as well? Let me check. No, it's just PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch. So similar to Elliot then. So we did get some final details. We were wondering about the mysterious new party member that showed up in one of the previous trailers to round out to make a set of 4. That is the Princess of Canuck, in addition to the Prince of Canuck. Now, I've not played Dragon Quest 2, so to me, this is like reading Greek. But that's your 4th party member. We got
apparently
Go ahead.
Sorry for the interruption. Apparently, she was in the original design documents, but just wasn't able to fit in the original game. So that's the reason why she's here in the remake, which is fascinating if that's the case. So
It was weird. Just like, oh god, you have 4 party members now. And I saw footage like that's crazy. I'm just thinking it sounds like it was old. It's like, wow, that's
yeah.
weird.
The more I like, because I played a bit of these a couple of months ago. The more I see of this, it's like, man, I think I'm more interested in how they're handling these remakes in Dragon Quest 3 because they're really reimagining things, and that's exciting.
I think it's definitely worth like if people have easy access to the original DQ1 and DQ2 to like maybe give them a quick playthrough first, and then so you
like
get a better appreciation of like what they're doing with the HD2D remake. Like it's really fascinating how much
like I said in my preview at the time, it's like I do not think it would have made sense to do a straight like remaster style remake of those games. So the fact that they understood that and was like, YOLO, let's just expand and change these, like transform them. It's like, yeah, I am down for that. I would love to see what you can do with that. And so far, it's like, yeah, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. Maybe it won't turn out perfect, but I'm glad that they're gunning for it. I'm super excited to play these.
And in the newsletter from Square Enix, they give some details, like in Dragon Quest 1, you're going to encounter fairies and dwarves, which were both present in 3, but not 1 originally. Unfamiliar, powerful enemies await the protagonist. So, like, familiar characters, and it shows Robin Hood, which I guess wasn't in 1 before, and it shows him here now. Not a spoiler, he's in, Square Enix is showing him off. And then in Dragon Quest 2, of course, they focus on the princess being the 4th playable party member. And then they say, of course, there are towns and villages that did not appear in the original Dragon Quest 2. What kind of events wait us there? So basically, they're very clearly saying, like, we have substantially, updated these. In the trailer shown at the Nintendo Direct, the main focus was the first game is still a solo adventure for the hero, and the second game has the party in the legacy of Erdrick, the hero from Dragon Quest 3. So that's still kind of a weird kind of footnote, the fact that these are now in chronological order rather than original trilogy release order in terms of like the story progression. It's one of those things where it's not really a secret or anything, but it's just a different perspective compared to the olds, like Josh said, that originally played.
Yeah, because they're developing these like with a continuity in mind now, which is like cool, but also in line with market trends. It reminds me of like when they included the Yuna character sprite model in like the Evo releases of the Crossbell games in Trail.
Yeah, seeing her stand in front of that vending machine ever seen. It's like,
So yeah, it's cool because like they're kind of more interweaving them as like, hey, we want to really emphasize that like how the after effects of 3's narrative and continuity and how it affected the worlds and stories of 1 and 2 moving forward. Like with that in mind, it's just like, okay, like I said, I'm more forgiving that like they do this in a remake, like rather than like a straight remaster. Like with a remake, I'm always going for like, you know what, go wild, because you're remaking the game, not recreating like a faithful version of the game. You're just trying to reimagine what it is now. Go for it.
And I think that's all the footnotes I had for Dragon Quest, either 3 or 1 and 2. There were 2 other Square Enix related things. These ones are a little bit more quick. Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, of course, is getting a Switch 2 edition. Well, I should say getting. It's now available. Then existing versions of the game were updated. The patch notes aren't that extensive, except for it seems like a lot of the tweaking on the patch notes, this is what they're calling version 1.1, are making a lot of techniques more potent. So it seems like in most cases, things have been slightly buffed out in terms of an easier experience, though there were a couple that had their effects decreased. So just tweaking of skills, and I don't think it's interesting enough to go line by line, but trying to make some of the more underutilized skills in that game a little bit more effective.
You can toggle motion blur now, which is very one of the more significant ones they introduced in this one.
That reminds me, I think I forgot to bring up, sorry. At the very end of the Octopath Traveler 0 trailer, it shows like a line of characters running towards like a cathedral or something, and it's like so blurry and blown out. It's just like it's like the worst example of HD2D, where it's like, can I turn off the bloom, the vignetting, any depth of field, like
just all the graphical settings off, please.
Please, I want to see the pixels. I think we had a podcast like 2 years ago that was our title, but I put that in the chat with the plankton my eyes gif for our boomer online. Anyways, so you can turn off the motion blur in Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven version 1.1, at least. And then the other one is that we did get a new trailer. Or did you have one more comment, Mikhail? Sorry.
I thought the motion blur thing was available before. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it defaults to it on, and it's abysmal dog shit on console with it on. Yeah, I posted a screenshot of when I played it on Switch 2 when I was testing for my article, and it's like Welcome Back Type 0 HD, literally that bad. Like there's no excuse for this. So yeah, anyway, continue.
I guess not to bury the lead though on this Romantic Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven story. Like there's a Nintendo Switch 2 edition that they pretty much shadow dropped. Like it's now available.
Yeah, so there's a $10 edition, $10 upgrade if you own the original game, or if you don't own it at all on Switch, it's discounted by I think 30%, so it's around 35, or it's under $40 right now to buy it digitally. If you have the physical, you should be able to upgrade for $10, and it's a massive upgrade. Like instead of being sub-native, but like not terrible. I thought Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven was like the best Saga game on Switch in terms of optimization and port quality until Saga Frontier 2. So like having that go from like a slightly soft visual 30 FPS with drops experience to faster loading in a lot of ways and like much higher resolution and 60 FPS, like easy recommendation for those who like, if you want to play it on Switch now, absolutely go for it. I'd say like Steam Deck OLED at least, because you can get like 90 FPS, or you can just like, if you can mod it and tweak the Unreal Engine stuff, you can make it look massively better than even on PS5, I'd say, in a way, because this has like forced dynamic resolution for some reason on console. Even if you disable it, there's some scaling happening. But it's just like really, really fantastic on Switch 2 now. I hope they do. Like, I'd buy this for like $70 physical. Like, it's that good, the upgrade. Just make sure you disable the motion blur because it's awful. So yeah.
It's also a fantastic game. It was my number one on my personal list last year. The last Square Enix trailer was probably the most soonest upcoming, pardon my grammar, game. This is Final Fantasy Tactics, the Ivalice Chronicles, releasing on September 30th. They just kind of gave us a new trailer for that upcoming release. This trailer primarily, they call it a story trailer. It's showcasing the new English dialogue, the voiceover. That's kind of the main takeaway here. And my opinion is that it sounds pretty good. I think it was a Trail's first chapter trailer where I said, I don't know if I like the voice acting, but it could just be that it never quite sound right cut up in a trailer compared to in game. But this one, the performances, it made me more interested in playing the game with the new new English script with the new voice acting, because I thought it presented itself well in the new trailer. And I guess our last comment on Square Enix is 2 articles from Mikhail. We've talked about both these series. You have articles up on the site for Dragon Quest games running on Switch 2, including not just the Dragon Quest 3 HD2D remake, but things like Dragon Quest 11S, Builders 2, Monsters, as well as Saga games, not just Romancing Saga 2, but Emerald Beyond, Scarlet Grace, and all those. So any final comments on those 2 kind of listicles on the site?
No, so just updated those with these new things because I'm glad like Square Enix did something for both of its recent releases. For Saga, I hope Emerald Beyond gets something because it's kind of not great on console in general. Even PS5 is a bit iffy. I'd say it's like fine, but it should be better. And for Dragon Quest, like Dragon Quest 11 really, really needs some sort of upgrade. It looks not great on Switch too. So yeah, like I hope like I don't mind paid upgrades also, because like I'm sure people who've invested like 100 hours into Dragon Quest 11 and who want to just go back to it now and then would pay to have like a better looking version, even for like potentially Octopath and stuff. Those would all be welcome, free, paid, whatever. Yeah, just those 2. And I was gonna have another back compat article today, but got a little busy, so we'll talk about it not next week, but maybe the week after that.
And there were other announcements at the Nintendo Direct that weren't Square Enix related. So I think we'll roll into those now. The next 2 headlines here are probably the biggest that we have. One of these was shown at Bolt Directs, and one of these was only on the Japanese one. So starting out, I think this is a surprise. I don't know if we expected to see this sub-series return, but we had the announcement from Capcom of Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. and with an introductory, basically CG announcement trailer for this game. This is one of the places where I'd be like, Adam, how excited are you if he was here? Because
I'm excited.
Did you play the first two? I haven't played them.
I reviewed Monster Hunter Stories too, and I did like
I don't remember these
impressions
things.
on the updates. Adam played it more than me, but I still put like 60, 70 hours.
Yeah, they're solid games. They're really solid games. So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
so
play-
this
I
it
played
still
the
has that
second one.
really bright and charming, cell shaded kind of art style. A little bit like a half notch more grown up, and I don't mean that with any like
I would
disparaging, but
say
like, go ahead.
I would say that 2 was a half notch more grown up. This one, especially when you read the press release, it's very clear that they're trying to boil the frog with Monster Hunter fans and being like, we're feeding you a JRPG. We're feeding you a JRPG. This one has a JRPG party now. We're feeding you it's now a JRPG with Monster Hunter stylings.
Because the
It's
first
really
couple
fun.
were like JRPG light, but they had like a very like rock paper scissors mechanic. Now we didn't get a lot of specific gameplay details here. This is more just introducing the vibe and the premise. But it wouldn't be surprised if they keep taking those half steps with each release
Yeah.
in the sub series.
Yeah. This is very clearly meant to be a proper, like, not even just a monster battling, but a narrative heavy RPG. Because you read the press release and it's like you have a party. It's not just you. You also have 2 other people hitching along for the ride. It's like, oh, neat.
Yeah. This is the story premise is all about these twin Rathalos, central to the plot line about this, civil war that happened 200 years ago. They share a set like the same mark from like the Sky Scale Rathalos from back then, etc. It's coming to pretty much every modern platform sometime next year. Switch 2, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. And there's some other monsters we saw in the trailer. We saw Magna Mallow
At the
from
very
Monster
end,
Hunter
yeah.
Rise. We saw Rachna. And I forgot who else showed up in the trailer that caught my eye. But I'm more interested in this than the previous two because, like James mentioned, this is more. Hey, there's a party focus now. You actually have a traditional JRPG party, so it feels a little less lonely than like the previous ones.
It feels very much taking inspiration from Rise Sunbreak. Because you like, if you look like the opening shot, it really does feel like, hey, that looks like the town from Sunbreak.
It's like that medieval theme. That Sunbreak had.
And Sunbreak itself also had a bit more of a party focus because you had like characters that, like, especially as you're going through the main story, it's like they could just join you. So it makes sense. Like if it started development around the time Sunbreak came out, which again was like, what was it, like 2023, 2022? Was it 2022 or 2023? I don't remember exactly. No, wait, yeah, it was 2020. Let me just check really quick.
It was probably 2022 because 2023, I remember Sunbreak was my game of the year when it came out, and Street Fighter 6 was 2023, right?
2022.
That was my game of the year. Yeah, so it was 2022.
So that would make sense then. It would line up. It probably started development around the time that Sunbreak came out, which would make sense then that if you're making a new Monster Hunter spinoff, you want to focus around the contemporary title at the time. So yeah, that probably isn't just like a coincidence. That probably is like part of the reason why it has some similarities there, which is nice. I'm pretty stoked about that.
Okay, so
Stories 3 is coming to everything at once, not just Switch 2. Yeah,
correct.
Even though like Stories 2 was on Switch 2 and PC.
Switch and PC,
and then it came to PS4 later on, and this one is on everything from the. I mean, everything current, I should say, from the start. It's not coming to Switch 1. Not coming to PS4.
Yeah, I mentioned.
I had a feeling this announcement was going to come up soon, just because it's like, why would you first of all port Stories 2 to PS4 and then do a remaster of Stories 1? And then have an in-person preview event for this, unless you're like, okay, we're trying to ramp up for an announcement for Stories 3. It's like that. There's only one reason you do that, and that is that reason. So,
and I don't know if do we know if Marvelous is still working on?
I would assume so because they worked on the first one and the second one. So it's like there's no reason about that not to.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, this was a nice surprise. Like I love Stories 2. I actually have been like getting back to it and playing it because it's so much better on Switch 2 than it is on Switch 1. Like Switch 1 was like, this is one of those games where when I played it on Switch One, I was like, why did Capcom not cap this to 30? But now it's like I'm glad they didn't cap it
And
to
it's
30.
and it seems like it's targeting 60 FPS for Stories 3 based off the Switch like the Switch 2 footage. It looked pretty decent resolution frame rate. So it's like, yeah, I mean, if there's not a Steam Deck 2 by the time this comes out, I'll probably play it on Switch 2 because that if it runs and looks that good, I would like to have it in a pretty good portable form factor. Yes, please and thank you.
I will
Yeah.
probably
Interesting.
be testing that out for all of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm interested in how the battle system is in this one, and usually these games, like with the previous, especially two, like they had a good like roadmap of like free content support after its release as well.
Yeah. One other piece of news from the Nintendo Direct that we'll get here for Mikhail before he has to step out of this recording. This is an announcement from Atlus, another port announcement. This is Persona 3 Reload, of course, released early last year, 2024. Will be launching on Nintendo Switch 2 on October 23rd, so not that far away. Mikhail, you had a comment about specifically the announcement of Persona 3 Reload on Switch 2?
Yeah, so I kind of expected this to maybe show up when they announced the Switch 2 in April, and I thought maybe that would be the Atlas thing, but it didn't show up, so it was here. And I've seen a lot of people focus on the keycard aspect of this because, yes, the physical is on a keycard, and I feel like that's focusing on the wrong part. Like, Atlas is doing a near 2-year late port of Persona 3 Reload at near full price, not including any DLC. So instead of being $70 like it is on PlayStation 5 for Xbox and Steam, it's $60 on Switch 2. It has none of the DLC included. So there's like a $60, a $70, and a $90 edition. And none of these include the expansion pass or episode, I guess. So potentially you're looking at, like, if someone wants everything together, all the DLC, $125 for a 2-year nearly late port of Persona 3 Reload,
Yeah,
which is
what they should have
potentially not even 60 FPS because some footage was capped at 30, some looked uncapped, and it's kind of like, I feel like,
what they should have
it's like
done.
expectation and reality. Like, I was hoping we'd see Metaphor coming to Switch 2 because I want to replay that. Instead, we're getting like the worst case outcome for Persona 3 Reload. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they did something stupid like and kept the RT reflections going because it's like, oh, well, the Switch 2 is like NVIDIA based. We should keep the RT going. It's like, we don't know. But if I was in charge, what I would have done is have a $50 base version that you can buy digitally, and the physical version was an actual game card, $70, but came with the DLC, the DLC. That would have been the best case. Unfortunately, that is not what happened.
All I'll say is there's just business as usual for Atlas releases and re-releases. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
I mean, we got into the same idea when we were talking about Use 10. It's like
exactly. Nothing has changed.
Look, I was gonna say, if you play like Azure Strike or Gunvolt, they released a new trilogy patch, and if you own like the games from original, you get a 50% discount.
Yeah.
They do this because they know people will pay up. They do this because it's always financially successful because people will always shell out the money for it. That's why they continue to do it. Why would they ever stop doing it?
Just hit them.
Because then we would be kinder to them on the podcast. That's why. And then I kind of teed this one up just a moment ago before jumping to Persona. This is something that Kite Steinbeck, one of our contributors, is always really good about catching. Not just him, but he's the one that tends to write these up. When Nintendo Directs have content differences between the regions they're shown in, finding what specifically is shown in the Japanese version of those directs, because eventually a lot of those titles do make their way over, but just announced earlier. What this is a new project from Nippon Ichi Software that they showed off. The title is Hono-gurashi no Niwa. Per Kite, the translation is about warm living garden. Does that kind of check out, James?
Yeah, I would say that checks out. It definitely seems like it looks very interesting because it's the Yomawari devs and it's very clearly using the same sort of like isometric and like a hand painted aesthetic. But whereas the Yomawari games kind of use the like a rural Japan aesthetic and kind of like coaxed it in like a horror aesthetic. This one, it's just like, no, it's like almost like melancholy, like not in a like, there's no horror in this game from what they've shown. It's just
Maybe there might be not horror at the very end of the trailer. There is definitely like when night comes, there might be something happening in the behind the scenes on this one. Teased at the end of this trailer, so there might be still some horror elements.
Okay, yeah, now I'm seeing that. So it
yeah.
seems like, and it is a bit of a follow-up to Yomawari there, but it seems like it's at least part of
The
it
focus
is
of it.
yeah.
So to tee up some of the details, this was shown off obviously on the Nintendo Direct in Japan, but it's coming to Switch 2, PlayStation 5, and PC. Japan only next year, about a year from now, July 30th. Like James and Josh have teed up, it's from the developers of the Yomawari series. The premise here is that you're a protagonist that wakes up in a village with no destination. So the villagers are like, why don't you work for us? So it seems like it's supposed to have like this chill, like village life. I don't want to say like Stardew like or farming sim, but village life sort of like progression game. But like Josh said, at the very end, there's some suggestions of ghosts or spirits, whether that's kind of like spooky cozy or really like spooky unnerving or uneasy. The vibe of this trailer is pretty bright and sunny right until that moment, but we'll see till how much they kind of go into maybe the more Yomawari kind of DNA from the developers.
I do think it's pretty interesting that they already give a precise release date of this of July 30th, 2026. That's kind of that's really out there, and I'm like, okay.
I think the reason why is you'll notice that they've already announced a Steam version, which tells me that while NIS America has not announced this yet, it is absolutely going to be a worldwide release.
I do wonder about that.
There's no reason that they would have, because like one thing that NISA has like had trouble with historically with NISJ is that they have not released Steam versions. So when they want to release games in the West, obviously they want it on PC, so they have to wait for the PC version. So if this is going to have a PC version day and date, and they've already announced a release date like a year in advance, no reason for me to assume that this is not going to be a day and date localization, even if it hasn't been officially confirmed yet. It seems
they have a good track record of localizing the Yomawari games anyway. And I think like I do hope this is like hopefully a hit for them. I hope this is a great game, because I know a lot of people admire the Yomawari games from the sidelines, especially artistically. But the survival horror aspect always, understandably turns them off, because a lot of those games is like kind of when you encounter danger, you can't combat it head on. You have to run away from them and find hiding spots.
I will. Neither here nor there, but we've already gotten the box art for this, and it's like, man, that's an incredible box art.
Oh,
like, I'm excited for this. I really like the Yomawari series, and I do think that, like you said, NIS has been struggling quite a bit recently. I feel like, though, this one I feel pretty good about. If it's a day and date release and people like Yomawari, it's a series that people already know, and it's also like a farming game, which people like. I feel pretty confident that this will be a much needed win. I hope it's a much needed win.
Yeah, they really need to focus on marketing the hell out of this game. Like, and at least they're already taking steps to it, like simultaneous PC release with the consoles. Like, I just think about Phantom Brave earlier this year. Like, whenever I mentioned Phantom Brave: The Lost Hero, people are like, "That came out." Like,
I still feel fucking terrible for Barcel Abyss, because if that was a day and date release worldwide with PC, I think that would have done much better.
I think it would have been like a real hit there. I feel like this was a tremendous lost potential for sure.
At least so far, they nailed the reveal. All the platforms that you need, day and date. I'm assuming it's going to be day and date worldwide, because that's what they did for Phantom Brave, and the fact that this is revealed so far in advance, and we already know there's a PC version, it tells me probably going to be the same here. Hopefully that's good. Hopefully, I want this to be good. Well, I'm sure it'll be good, because most of NIS's stuff recently has been good. But I hope this is a success. They need it.
2 more announcements from the Nintendo Direct. I don't want to this one is a quick announcement, but it is kind of a fun surprise. This is coming also, I guess, from SaGa, from RGG Studios. Yakuza Kiwami and Yakuza Kiwami 2 are going to be releasing on November 13th for the Nintendo Switch 2. So the announcement there is Yakuza Kiwami 2 coming to Nintendo Switch 2. So Kiwami 1 obviously is on Switch, and then Kiwami 2 will be releasing on both the Switch and the Switch 2 later this year on November 13th.
The big new thing here, it's not necessarily like not new game content, but they are supporting more languages for text in game. So French, Italian, German, Spanish, Latin Spanish, Brazilian, Portuguese, and Russian. So just try to get this way more accessible to international audiences, which is always a big win.
Yeah, no announcement of added story cutscenes that to critique for these versions. I guess that also means no announcement of I haven't been following this as much because to me I kind of said like, oh, I've played these games so I don't need to worry about them, but dub, like obviously the big thing for Yakuza 0 Director's Cut was a dub, but these nothing's been brought up.
Yeah, I didn't see any announcement of the English dub for these.
Yeah, so obviously we'll follow up if something gets elucidated on there, but yeah, no announcement of that. And then lastly, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. We knew about this game. It was announced, earlier in the summer. Still slated for a winter 2025 release. We got basically a new story trailer for this. A little tiny bit of gameplay here, but mostly just story flavor for this. I'm not sure if there's a lot to latch on here. I did kind of like some of the funny feedback to this, where it's like during Tears of the Kingdom. Obviously, the game is set in the past window of Zelda's time in Tears of the Kingdom. It's like, according to Nintendo, during Tears of the Kingdom, what was Zelda doing in the past? Basically nothing. According to Koei Tecmo, killing a million dudes or whatever.
Yeah, and she was so right for it. And that's why we love Koei Tecmo's retelling of events, because they know what's up.
And one other thing that they say on the footnote here of the trailer, I appreciated that they called this out. Players can experience the thrill of battle in this canonical tale. Like they're saying this actually happened.
Not like Age of Calamity. That was kind of super retconned by the end of it. Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting that is canonical, even by their own words. It's gonna be weird because I still don't know exactly who the playable cast is in this game. Like it's kind of a weird you're gonna be.
Well, you have the 7 sages or whatever that are like the characters that we only get a very brief glimpse of in the past story, like scenes in Tears of the Kingdom.
People like there was a teaser at the end that played Fi's theme, so people are like wondering if she's going to play a role, because that would make sense considering it's like a lot of people are like, she okay? The Master Sword got fucked up. So
I actually didn't catch that. I was actually going to say, like, who's the mech at the end? I didn't parse that it was Fi's theme or Fi's theme. So, okay.
Yeah.
And I think that is it from the Nintendo Direct. Here we are 2.5 hours later, and there's still more news to go through. But that was the plurality of it. But yeah, Nintendo Directs are always a deluge and a group project, basically, to make sure it's covered on the site, for us to make sure we got all the details straight, present them in an order. So if you've listened to the podcast through all of that, appreciate you, but we got more to go. Not a ton more, but a decent amount more. Because alongside the Nintendo Direct, we also had a THQ kind of Direct. Let's see what they called it. THQ Nordic Showcase 2025. And that had a decent number of RPG-related announcements here. Probably not as big, but a couple things that people have been looking forward to for a long time. And at least one thing that's kind of a brand new thing on our radar here. So without further ado, we'll go into it. The big 2 first announcements. This one was kind of expected to be a big announcement, but ended up being more of a tease. Last year, THQ announced that they were going to do a new entry in the Darksiders series. So Darksiders, of course, started with the original game about 15 years ago or so, 2010-ish era. And that was back when it was like Vigil Games, before all of the Embracer Group, THQ dying, and like all the different versions of THQ like dropping the name and picking the name back up. Vigil Games kind of split to Gunfire and Airship Syndicate, and like I'm probably getting some of the order of events wrong, but somehow through all of that, Darksiders IP persists, of course. So last year it was just an unannounced Darksiders project. This year the main announcement is that it is Darksiders 4. But not a lot more details other than that. We got a new announcement trailer, kind of a teaser trailer, showing that it is Darksiders 4 and that it will feature all 4 horsemen: War, Death, Fury, and Strife. And then based on some store listings, I believe it was the PlayStation Store listing that listed this first, is that it will have cooperative play in some fashion and online play in some fashion. The details of what that is, whether it's kind of like a Gotham Knights type experience or if the co-op is like a separate mode, I don't think I've seen any specific details about how that works.
Some context for this is that back when visual games was still visual games and like THQ was falling apart, they actually did share some of the ideas that they had for the series because they didn't know if they were going to be able to continue it. And they said that their plan from the beginning is they wanted to have one main game for each of the horsemen, and then the last game in the series. So in this case, it would be Darksiders 4. They wanted it to be a co-op game with all 4 of the horsemen. So that to me, knowing the context and the fact that it's come to fruition, and especially since like Gunfire Games are the people that work on Remnant, like Remnant 2. It's probably you can probably play it solo, but I assume it's going to be balanced around the idea of something like Gotham Knights, which considering that was the original idea, that's cool. I'm glad they managed to get there. It's like, hell yeah.
Yeah, I remember that statement from them too, that many years ago. But that on the Steam listing, it does have the online co-op tag, and it does say in that description, like, choose your horseman, take up one of the legendary horsemen, each with their own unique weapons and combat styles. You know, it's kind of in a weird place because the first game you have Wrath, or what was it? Was it Wrath? War. Yeah, War, and he's basically Zelda man. You know, plays like a Zelda game. 2, Death. Diablo man, you know, so action RPG, loot driven.
He was still pretty Zelda man too.
See, like War was way more Zelda man because of the way the game was structured. While 2 was way more action RPG loot focused, unlike 1. So
it had like the tiered colored loot and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you had Darksiders 3. You had Pestilence, and she's Souls-like lady, you know.
I know Pestilence is normally one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, but I guess in this IP it's Fury.
Oh, Fury, sorry. Yeah. I always get mixed up on that change.
No worries.
Yeah. So, but she's Souls-like lady. And then Strife is in a weird spot where, like, he doesn't really have his own game. He was, like, playable in Darksiders Genesis, that isometric.
Yeah, he had to share it with War.
Online co-op as well. So, you know, like Darksiders 4 wouldn't even the first entry for this online co-op, being able to choose one of the horsemen because you have Darksiders Genesis fulfilling that role, you know? Mm-hmm. So this one is like, it kind of exists in a weird thing. So like, if each of the 3 previous horsemen that were previously playable have their own unique playstyles because they're taking up like the systems of the game that they debuted in as playable characters, which is cool. Where does Strife exist? Is he like Remnant dude then? You know?
If you play as Strife, you get the overhead look, you get the twin stick shooter. You get the helicopter view.
I mean, to me, this announcement very much reads as, since the team has had so much success with Remnant 2, it's like, we technically have all the pieces in place. If we want to make this super game that we have been working towards for the last like 15 years, it is now or never. And I can vibe with that. I actually do think that it's like, take your shot, and like the current state of Gunfire Games, I have full trust that this is going to be a really good game.
I mean, Gunfire Games, super talented studio. They did so much great work with the previous the Remnant series in general, and you know, a lot of lessons were learned, and they kind of have a good head on their shoulders now. Like, hey, what works for us, and what do the people want here? So I'm very interested. You know, I'm very interested in Darksiders 4. It just, like, the question remains of like, okay, will this actually move the timeline forward finally? You know.
Well, based on the trailer, it seems
they did say yes. They said it takes place after Darksiders 1, so it's like finally.
Finally. You know?
And a few years ago, I remember we were talking. So Joe Madura is the comic artist who wrote the original Darksiders comic. He's over at Airship Syndicate. So so basically they did Genesis. They did not do 3 or 4. That was Gunfire. But I forget if it was our interview with him, because we had the chance to do that, or just another interview I read. It's been a few years. Apparently, Airship and Gunfire, at least according to Joe Madura, have a really like good working relationship, both publishing games under the IP with THQ. And basically, like, Joe was able to get their feedback for the original design of Fury, and making sure that they, faithfully recreate that for 3, and then they handled Strife and getting his full design and characterization in Genesis. So I'm curious to see. I've not looked it up. If Joe has made any comment on Darksiders 4, because it's kind of like his baby, but he's not at that studio. But based on everything from the past, it seems like he is got full faith in Gunfire Games, and Gunfire Games has had a lot of success with all of their projects recently, specifically The Remnant 2 kind of being almost a breaking out point for them, because Darksiders 3 preceded that. Didn't set the world on fire, but it was still kind of like it kept the series alive when it could have easily died with Vigil Games. And I'm kind of curious about potentially like revisiting these games, because yeah, you got your Zelda like, your action game, your Souls like, going into this one, which might play differently again. But yeah, I saw some feedback on this saying that we are hoping to see more, but still, we have a title, we know what it is, and no release date, probably going to be a few years out, but excited that it still exists. And for those that have followed the series, I think the trailer kind of punched where it needed to. The second thing I have listed here from the THQ showcase is a new IP. This is not one that I've followed or was that I really knew much about. It's the debut IP for a developer, Paraglacial, who I guess they're former team members from the team behind Spellforce 3, not a game that I know much about here. The new IP that they announced here at the THQ Nordic showcase is called Fatekeeper. It debuted with a about 3-minute long announcement trailer. It is a first-person medieval fantasy RPG, and I don't want to be like Boss Baby vibes or whatever, but when I first looked at it, my immediate points of comparison, because I've played them recently this year, are games like Tainted Grail and Avowed. So that sort of medieval setting with a huge fantasy mythical influence here. Maybe a little bit more dreary and grimdark than both of those. In terms of like the premise of the game, a lot of what they're showing is pretty like I don't want to say generic, but pretty broad. I should say it that way. Like ancient civilizations, tombs, forgotten ruins, mystical forests, things like that. So not a whole lot to latch onto other than fantasy set dressing. The trailer does give a lot of like enemy design, beast design, demon design, those sorts of things, and it all seems like pretty evocative, pretty fitting for the setting that they're showing off here. They show some kind of like gameplay snippets, but I guess they do show some like UI elements here. So
yeah, I appreciate that they actually show off gameplay. It's not a CGI trailer or anything. They actually show, hey, this is what the game will look like when you're playing the video game. It's which I always appreciate. I guess there's an early access launch planned for this winter via Steam in that regard, and then like one of the screenshots does show like the inventory screen. You kind of sort of have like your Diablo-esque like grid inventory that you drag and drop things into and so forth. You see some of the stats here. You have like movement speed, dash, cost, etc. What equipment you can put forth. So best of luck to them.
RPG stuff.
Yeah. I hope to have a solid early access launch and get a lot of like great feedback to make the game even better for the full release. I'm always supporting that venue and getting the community to help you get in the right direction if you need it. Good on them. But brand new RPG, brand new developer, pretty much like new studio. Good luck. I hope this is awesome.
I'm face palming a little bit here because I'm like, I wonder what the Steam forums think about the debut. And a few things are like valid. Like, does this game have third person view? Because for some people, that's an accessibility thing. Nope. Announced as a first person action RPG doesn't mean it won't come in the, it's been added to other first person games as well. But then also the usual, is this game woke? This game is woke. And I'm like, Jesus, never mind. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
But I, as someone who played and enjoyed both Avowed and Tainted Grail to various extents, I look at this, I'm like, if it came out like now, I think I'd be a little bit burnt out from that sort of vibe. But as like a 2026 full release, presuming it comes out about a year after early access, who knows? I'm like, you know what? I'm in the mode for this. I've enjoyed a lot of games of kind of this trapping, and this seems kind of up my alley.
I hope it runs well, because looking at like the footage and screenshots, it's like, man, this game looks absurdly good. I hope it scales well.
Yeah. If at the very least, like you could like this type of genre of like, hey, first person melee and spell casting, sort of hybrid. It just feels like it's back. Like there's a healthy amount of releases it's getting within like that subgenre and that flavor of game. Good.
around the time of like Skyrim, first person combat was kind of like you kind of deal with that for the rest of it. But here it's like a lot of those games, they feel really good to play. And like Kingdom Come, not a fantasy game, but kind of put their stake on that. We're going to make first person combat fun. And then Vowed is like, we're also going to make first person combat fun. And Tainted Grail's like us too. So, and I think, and not to the same extent for all of those, but a lot of those games, I would say they succeeded in that. So Fatekeeper looks fun to play. It looks like a really cool new IP. I'm interested to see more. Kind of a few other little smaller things for THQ coming from their streaming event. The long announced Gothic 1 remake is got a new release window, is going to be launching in early 2026 for Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and PC. It has this is not the first demo they've had, but they've got a new demo available, but only on console. So there's a demo available now for Gothic 1 Remake on PS5 and Xbox Series. I have no idea what the reception to that's been. I know for the previous demo it was pretty bad, but obviously it allowed the developer to go back and tweak and tune some things up. There's a new trailer that is told through a character named Zardas, and kind of going over, like, it's kind of an in-universe trailer of Zardas going over some of the factions of the game. As someone who's not played Gothic, a lot of it's kind of Greek to me, but I've seen the comments under the trailer, like Zardas got a glow up or things like that. So apparently a pretty major player of in the game. So I'm interested to see like if this had a PC demo, I'd probably play it, but I don't know if I'm gonna dust off my PS5 to play through a demo. But I'm curious to see like not just what the reception for this demo is, but the progression from like the previous time it had a stress test versus the new demo, how things have changed. But yeah, 2026. So still not too far away from full release for this one either, since we're in the back half of this year. And then speaking of Gothic, this is a new announcement, is that THQ also announced that the original Gothic trilogy, they're calling it, let me scroll down here, make sure I get the name right, Gothic Classic Collection, is coming to PlayStation and Xbox in 2026. So this is a Gothic 1, 2, and 3 with updated controls, full gamepad support, specifically for console. My guess is because the PC version, that's where they originally launched. I don't know if that means the PC version will get any sort of like quality of life updates or anything like that, but it'll make these all playable on consoles, at least PlayStation and Xbox, for the original trilogy.
They're covering themselves just in case the Gothic 1 remake doesn't pan out. The console people will be like, hey, you have access to the original versions. If you don't like the remake, you can go play the OGs. There you go.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure the Gothic 1 remake is going to turn out all right, because they've been doing a lot of different demos to get like all sorts of different feedback, and performance-wise, it seems to scale well, which is the important thing. I think a lot of people on PC are fine with a game on the absolute max settings, being heavy to run, as long as it doesn't stutter and as long as it's reasonable for like the visuals you get. And
I just know the Gothic audience is picky. They definitely want these games a certain way, a certain style.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Two more things for THQ. This is another remaster announcement. This is a Sacred 2 remaster. Sacred 2 Fallen Angel, originally released in 2008. And it is going to get a remaster developed by Sparkling Bit. I don't know much about them. The original developer of Sacred 2 was Ascaron. These are not names I am intimately familiar with. But the Sacred 2 remaster is in development for Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and Steam. It'll have revamped UI, controller support, a lot of the same sorts of things as the Gothic port, and it is in development. I was saying, do we have a release window? It seems not explicitly stated, but it is just in development for console.
I think this is one of the first games I played on PS3, if I remember.
Oh, really?
It's actually one of the earliest PS3 games I played. I don't remember liking it, but maybe it's because it ran very poorly on PS3. So that might have tainted my view on it. Other than that, I have no recollection of anything else besides not liking it, and maybe because the performance was bad.
And then lastly, Titan Quest 2 is now available in early access on PC, both on the Steam and Epic Games Store. And the reason why I paused here is because we have an original release date on our site listing August 1st, but that's really just the early access date. So I don't know if we have a full date known for this, but available in early access to play now.
They said they'll leave early access by the end of 2026.
Gotcha.
That's so we don't have a full release date yet, but by the end of next year, hopefully, it'll be out. But take your time to polish it up as need be. Like Path of Exile 2, for example, is technically still in early access right now. So, but I'll probably wait for the full release. I really enjoyed Titan Quest 1. I don't know what to expect out of a Titan Quest 2 because Titan Quest 1 was in that period of like, hey, there needs to be like that was a really cool alternative to like a Diablo. You wanted a different flavor of action RPG, and Titan Quest 1 delivered in that regard. So I'm not really sure what to expect out of this.
And one little piece of connective tissue that I just caught now is when we talked about the new first-person RPG IP, Fatekeeper, I said it was from Paraglacial Games, from former Spellforce 3 developers. So the Spellforce 3 team is Grimlore Games, and they're the ones working on Titan Quest 2. So a little bit of a love triangle there sort of thing. Grimlore, they made Spellforce 3, and now they're making Titan Quest 2. Former Grimlore team members are now at Paraglacial making Fatekeeper. All those projects are under the new or current THQ Nordic umbrella. But yeah,
they did mention that the early access price for Titan Quest 2 is $29.99 US dollars, or $29.99 US dollars. But it'll have a reduced price from now till August 8th to down to $24. And then but the full 1.0 release will arrive at $50. So it's still even at the full release of this game, it'll still be relatively cheaper than most newer games these days.
And that covers it, I think, for all of the game announcements, new trailers, new dates, things like that. We have a few more like small bit things at the very end, like a few delays and a few announced dates for some previously announced things. We do have two headlines here that are slightly more kind of biz dev focused here that I believe Josh slotted in. One for Nintendo and one for Sony. So we'll start with Nintendo here. We've spent a lot of time talking about, of course, upcoming Switch 2 projects, Square Enix, other third parties, Nintendo themselves, things like that. But we have a news post here for the Switch 1. The headline here from Gamatsu: Switch price increased, announced for the US. This is actually my first time hearing about this. So what is this about, Josh?
In anticipation of the upcoming tariffs from the US, Nintendo posted, hey, we're gonna have to make some price adjustments, primarily targeting the Switch 1 and some accessories here. Gamatsu noted that Target has already gotten live with the new pricing very recently, so people know what to expect when these prices go live on August 3rd. So by the time you're listening to this podcast, they're probably already updated. Like the Switch OLED model, which was previously $350 US dollars, is now being bumped up to $400 US dollars. The original Switch non-OLED model, previously at $300 US dollars, is now being priced up to $340 US dollars, and the Switch Lite, it was previously $200 US dollars and now being bumped to $230 US dollars. Remember that Nintendo alarm clock, the Alarmo, that's getting a $10 price increase from $100 US dollars to $110 US dollars. And the Joy-Con 2 controllers are being bumped up from $95 US dollars to $100 US dollars. So that's some of it. I don't know if that's all of it.
Yeah. And keep in mind, like the Joy-Con 2s already had a price increase because of an earlier round of tariffs. So, yeah.
So we just have to continue to live in this kind of hell new reality of like where the price of consumer electronics is just going to go up instead of down over time.
Yeah, these are about 15% increases roughly.
Yeah, everyone that bought a Switch 2 early was smart to do so, because it's very clear that the only reason that hasn't gone up is that Nintendo is eating the margins to get a user base so they can sell games, and that is probably not going to last for that. Like I would imagine that sometime like early next year it'll just like rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, I think they really, really want to keep the current price at least through the holidays of this year. Yeah. And then no promises, no bets going into the next year on Switch 2 pricing, all that stuff. So, continue. Good luck. I mean, it sucks. It's gonna keep on happening. It's not just Nintendo. You're probably gonna see.
We already saw it with Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah, so you're gonna continue to see it rise even more. Like it feels like.
Yep.
It's not going to stop there. It's going to continue to rise.
I'm curious what the MSRP for the GPU I bought is now, because that is terrifying to think of. Let me see.
Which GPU you're talking about?
Zotac 5090.
Oh,
I bought it for 2,200 bucks. It is now retailing for 2,900.
Very, very cheap.
All right. Next news story, Brian.
So on the Sony front. So this is about a game we have not talked about. The game is from Tencent. It is called Light of Motiram. We have not covered this game, though I'm sure if you Google YouTube Light of Motiram, you can see that this game has very clear inspirations. And this is not the first time we've seen this for any developer, not just Tencent. You can talk about Palworld. Remember when Genshin Impact was a Zelda clone? Things like that. But Sony took a look at the available footage of Light of Motiram and said that this game looks incredibly similar to the Horizon series, Zero Dawn, Forbidden West. And then, I believe this is a key piece of information, is that Sony declined to collaborate with Tencent in the past about the Horizon series.
Multiple times. Yeah. And the important context there is not even before this game's development, but after this game started development, like they declined a licensing agreement for the Horizon IP to them multiple times. So it's like, yeah, I wonder why Sony would feel like this is probably directly ripping off the Horizon IP.
So the headline is that they are filing a lawsuit against Tencent for the Light of Motiram. They're saying that it is a slavish clone featuring identical gameplay, themes, article elements to Horizon, and other similarities.
It's also worth noting that you look at the gameplay loop of this, and it seems to be like more of like a Monster Hunter style game. One of the rumors for one of the, I don't know if it was canceled or if it's still going on, like games as a service games at Sony was a Horizon game that was more like Monster Hunter.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember when I saw like gameplay footage of this when it was first announced. It was like it kind of had that also, like there's a survival crafting element to it as well. But like that like you mentioned, Brian, the main thing that really separates this from like other similar stories of like, hey, these games look like other popular games like Palworld, the Pokemon, and they also went through their whole round of like lawsuits, and the Palworld developers did have to make changes to their game to comply with that lawsuit with the Pokemon company in that regard. So there was actual gameplay elements changed in that over time after release with that. But like like say Temtem, or let's say like Genshin looking like Zelda, for example, like they didn't have to like go through that song and dance. But the main distinguishing thing is that, as we talked about, Tencent and Sony were in talks for this, and Sony denied Tencent from the access to the Horizon IP, and it feels like Tencent was like, we're still gonna go march on ahead anyway, even though they denied us. So that's you're walking a dangerous game here.
Yeah.
So that this will go through the courts, and I'm sure that this who knows what the fate of this game will be at the end of this. Let them fight. Let them all discuss it and fight it out. We're just gonna. It's not like it's complicated, and it's also probably wasn't right for Tencent to continue on with this project in the way that it did aesthetically. Because people will look at side by side in this game and Horizon, and people admit, like, if we didn't have a close familiarity with Horizon, we probably would have mistaken this game for Horizon.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to like make sure I like, I don't want to. How do I word this? Like, some of the inspirations are very clear, not just like the design of it, but like how their logo like animation unfurls. But then there are also sorts of things that the Light of Motiram game has shown, like fishing and base building and things like that aren't really Horizon derivatives on themselves. But that doesn't mean like I don't have the biz dev knowledge to be like, what is the sort of concession here that would be expected of a lawsuit like this? Like, I don't think the game will die, but maybe like we saw with Palworld, we'll see some adjustments made or some sort of settlement in that way. So I'm curious to see what the outcome will be, just kind of for my education, like when this sorts of thing happens and there is actually merit to Sony saying like, hey, we were working with you, we did not give you rights to the IP and yet you did this anyway. What sort of claim they have and what sort of outcome is likely. So I'm
The
curious about
closest
following
recent
this.
example, the closest recent example is Mekarashi. Those devs that reached out to Square Enix, and at one point that
Right,
was
yeah.
Front Mission, Borderscape, or whatever, and then Square Enix or some for one reason or another backed out of the deal. It's like, hey, don't do this. Don't we don't want to do this, and yet those devs continued anyway. So Square Enix filed a lawsuit against them, like, hey, you're kind of. Yeah, we denied you already on this, so those devs still released Mekarashi, but that was after they had to make some changes to it to make it less front mission esque
I
and
do
aesthetically.
I do wonder if this might turn out differently though, because reading between the lines, like the thing with Mekarashi is that they had a contract with Square Enix. Like they had done work under contract for them, where none of this work that Tencent did was under contract for Sony because they never got the license. So that I wonder if that would be the difference legally.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
So obviously we'll keep our eye on that and see how it turns out. And that was it for kind of our little biz dev tangent here. We do have a few more headlines and a couple more trailers before we wrap up this extra long news focused podcast. This one is for a game that Chow did have to step out, both Chow and Mikhail, because we're just running a little long in people's schedules. But a game that we kind of talked about pretty highly last year, that's sort of Convallaria. It was a game that had, Josh, clear off my memory here. It had like a free-to-play component and then a pay-to-play component, right? It had like two halves within this game.
Like it is a free-to-play game, but there's one aspect, like a single-player branching path story aspect, where you don't have to interact with the gacha system at all for this single player aspect. That's like branching paths, different storylines, sort of deal. And then another side of it was like, hey, that interfaces more with the gacha element that has like this tower modes, like these other more games as a service S modes on it, that like you don't really have to interact if you just want to interact with the single player story mode in it.
That's what it was.
It's a strategy RPG, very evocative in a sense of Final Fantasy Tactics, definitely inspired by that, but not, it doesn't rip it off or anything, but it's very inspired by that game design wise.
The main news here is that the game has had a lot of like first year anniversary kind of updates. A lot of these are like new banner summons, a number of free summons, a daily pull reward starting from August 1st to August 7th, like for the gacha side of things. But there's also like a new challenge mode they're calling the Pioneering Odyssey, and then a new expedition mode for like the other gameplay part of this. So basically it just seems like a pretty substantial anniversary update for sort of Convallaria that's not just on the gacha side, but also for players that have played the non-gacha elements of the game, still get to indulge in the anniversary if they're still playing the game.
Yeah, Chow talked about a lot of this too, like when we discussed it on the last podcast too, like a new like chapter in the story and whatnot, and what that'll bring. And then there's also getting a collaboration event with Delicious and Dungeon at the end of the month for the global version of that game, and so forth. So it's kind of just more formalizing what Chow said last week on the podcast about this game.
Two more just quick trailers here. This one we were expecting to see for the upcoming Trails in the Sky first chapter. I remember 2 weeks ago saying, well, the only characters we're missing now are character trailers for Tita and for Zin. And now we have both of those trailers released, both in English and Japanese. So I think that wraps out the cast. Of course, we still have basically a month and a half before the September 19th release date. So I'm not exactly sure. We've had a few of the region trailers. I'm not sure if we've had all of them. I know we've had like Roland and Zeiss. So there might be a few more to wrap up for the region trailers.
It's gonna be weird because like the only one like after this that specifically is like the capital, I think. So I'm thinking like, but there's not really any playable or any new main cast characters by then. There's like when it's like, so it's probably gonna just show off like some of the NPCs you meet there and whatnot, but not any like main cast playable characters. I imagine, because they already have those.
And then also we got an upcoming. This is for an August release. Lost Soul Aside. It's got its current release date before it changes, August 29th. This is of course coming out to PC and PlayStation 5, being published by Sony. They just did a trailer, a weapon trailer, basically showing their main character, whose name I forget, not Noctis.
Not talk this. I don't know. I remember either. So sorry.
And basically showing the 4 of the weapon options here, and that are sword, greatsword, pole blade, and scythe, showing some very flashy, very quick gameplay footage across 4 of the weapon types. And then to the trailer's credit, it has some pretty stylish, simple but stylish animation in the trailer for showing the ability to switch weapons mid combo. Like if you're switching from sword to great sword, the character's in the air doing an arrow combo. Then the UI element on the trailer switches out sword with great sword and shows the character switch to the new gear and continue the combo. So pretty neat stuff. But it's yeah. I saw one of the comments like it's like Square Enix and Devil May Cry had a baby, and it's like I've heard that before. But it looks very flashy, very fun, and only a month away. This feels like kind of like the forever game, where it's like, how long have we been talking about this? But also, we've got a release date. Yeah. And it says August 2025. Hey, it's August 2025 now. So yeah, just a very quick gameplay focused trailer with the 4 weapons up on Sony's YouTube channel. Finally, we're kind of at just the wrap up bit at the end of the podcast. We do have one sales update. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance has sold 1 million units worldwide. That's, of course, the re-release from last year where it went to PC and every other platform with a new story mode. Shin Megami Tensei 5 series, so I guess Vengeance plus the original Switch version, is at 2 million. So 2 million for Shin Megami Tensei 5 plus its Vengeance re-release last year.
Both good games. Congrats to them, and go re-release 4 for Apocalypse and Strange Journey.
We have a couple dates here. Fate Hollow Ataraxia Remastered will launch on August 7th for Nintendo Switch 1 and PC.
Yep, very, very excited for this. Much like last year when they announced the release date for Fate Stay Night Remastered, it was just like a week away. It's like, well, hopefully you've made some progress either reading or rereading Fate Stay Night Remastered, because this game is the follow-up to that game. I'm like almost done my reread of the final route in Fate Stay Night Remastered, so I'm like at a pretty good spot. This is based off the Vita release of the game, so like the all ages version in the Vita release, because the original version had arrow scenes, which is very normal at the time that it came out. But one of the things they mentioned here is like the Capsule Servant mini game, which is one of the mini games, because this game, unlike Fate Stay Night, had like very basic but fun mini games, very evocative, like that early to mid aughts like Flash era style games. But one of the more significant ones, Capsule Servant, that was in the Vita release, won't be in this. That's kind of a more fully featured, like involved mini game. So it was, it's kind of like a 50-50 whether it's going to make it or not. Of course, in the stream and the Japanese stream, they're like, "Well, you could get this at the Japanese Android iOS store." Like, all right, fuck us international players. But it's in the grand scheme of things, not a totally big deal, because you're here for the main visual novel, which is the bulk of the game, the important part of the game. But it does kind of suck in preservation wise of of them not including that Capsule Servant mini game. Nonetheless, I'm still very, very, very excited for this game. Hollow Ataraxia, incredible fucking visual novel from Type Moon.
I knew that when they announced the date, it was going to be it's out within a week, but I was still dumb and did not fucking finish Fate Stay Night yet.
I'm like at day 8 of the Heaven's Feel route, which is pretty much at the home stretch of that. So I'm well suited. I just need to get on it. Hopefully it releases in a totally normal state and not in the hilarious state that Fate Stay Night Remastered released it in the West, where you kind of had the randomizer version of Fate Stay Night awkwardly released in the first few hours until they patched to fix that. Where basically when you booted up the game in the first 2 hours, it basically just was out of order. There were like character models and parts of the English script that were just randomly appearing in places that were not supposed to be in there.
I remember, because of the way that Proton works, that the Steam Deck exclusively did not have that issue. But like every other, like if you played it on a regular PC, you had that issue, which is very funny to think about.
Wasn't it due to the fact that like some files on the back end were like, whether they were script files or PNGs of the character art, like they were sorted wrong or something, like, or they're being read as if they were being sorted wrong?
It's a very common issue with that generation of PC visual novels, where a lot of not just visual novels, but any sort of like indie or doujin release from a Japanese developer back then, you would have to use like locale emulators when running games, because some games just would not work right if you tried to load them on like a Western PC.
Yeah, because you had to set the Japanese locale, or whether it's through emulation or native through your OS. So yeah, it was a very antiquated product. It's like it's just it was very much like if you tried to play those games back then and knew the process, it's like this is It's kind of there's like an old school problem. It's like man, this is really nostalgic that they reintroduced this problem.
Yeah, if you were one of those people that like back then was familiar with this problem, and the fact that it was fixed so quickly, it wasn't really so much an annoyance, rather it was like a very like endearing quirk. It's like, I remember this. That's cute.
Few other release dates. Neptunia Game Maker Re-Evolution will be finally launching on Steam on August 26th. Indie game Wander Stars was originally supposed to release on August 1st for Switch and PC. They had some feedback in their open beta that was critical of the game's UI elements and a few other things. So the developers said, hey, we're going to take time to address the feedback, and we're pushing back the release of Wander Stars to September 19th. I just closed my podcast outline, so let me bring it back up here for the last two headlines. Disgaea 7 Complete will be releasing on Nintendo Switch 2 in the West on October 10th.
This just bundles in all the DLC. I forgot there's no new story content, right? It's just like all the DLC bundled in.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
And we do have a note here that there will be a playable demo on Nintendo Switch 2 around the time at PAX West, which
I'll be going there.
Is that like
end of the month?
They
September?
released that demo. It's the end of this month. I'm sure
end of August
will have.
September.
Yeah, I'm sure Misa will have a big presence at PAX. So I hope they release this demo on the eShop. I would very much like to see how it performs.
And then finally, Utawarerumono Zan will launch for PC via Steam on October 23rd.
They announced this PC version like 2 years ago or something like that, right?
It feels like it was forever ago. Let's see, the July 2020, at the end of July last year.
Oh no, okay, so it was almost exactly a year. Okay. I just when they said it was going to come out in 2025, I assumed it was going to be early 2025, but they announced it so early, I guess. It is very interesting that they're releasing this PC port over 6 years after the localization on PS4. I wonder if they're just doing it to, I don't know, because are they going to do Zan too? Because that's the much better game. But
I have no idea what their strategies are anymore, and how the Aqua Plus kerfuffle will how will that affect the pipeline moving forward as well?
Yeah, there's every possibility that Aqua Plus gets purchased by Shiravune's parent company, because that's DMM Games. So
that's true. Then finally they can stop fucking around and get White Album 2 onto Steam.
Yeah, I do wonder if White Album 2, if the issue might be Valve's policies, but with stuff this week, it seems like Valve themselves are getting frustrated with payment processors and reading between the lines. It sounds like part of what their policies being so weird was them trying to toe the line, and if that's the case, them putting their foot down and saying these assholes are inconsistent is maybe a very good sign that they've had it up to here with them, and they're just like putting their foot down.
Well, it'd be nice if they put their foot down and all, and then that actually reflected on like what the consumers feel and stuff.
Yeah, hopefully.
Obviously, everyone's kind of have to be hessed up payment processors at the end of the day, especially the biggest ones on the planet, at least in the West. So, I didn't know about this, and I know where to end it here, but I kind of wish we had that option in Japan where if you want to pay by cash, you just print out a barcode, you go to a store and pay for it via cash. Like, I didn't know that was a thing, and I was like, oh fuck, that sounds awesome. I would pay for cash.
There's that, and you can also pay with your like your rail card, like Passmo and stuff like that.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
It's which makes sense because it's like payment processors don't need to know what you're using that
Exactly.
railway stuff on. You're just paying as far as they know. You're paying for the fucking like your transportation to and from work.
Basically, they have way less of a monopoly there in Japan, and they have way more alternative options to pay like for stuff anonymously, and it sounds so fucking good. Unlike here in the West.
And we're at the very end of our podcast, though I have two more things I do want to call out here just because we didn't get to fit them in, going from the games talk to the news to the Nintendo Direct, all that, is that Mikhail does have a preview up on the site as well for Story of Seasons Grand Bazaar on Switch 2. Of course, that'll be releasing at the end of the month around August 27th. And then we talked about it 2 weeks ago, AI, the Somnium Files, No Sleep for Konami Date. James, you were able to put up an interview opportunity that you had with Kazuya Yamada up on the site.
As always, Spike Chunsoft is surprisingly chatty when it comes to interviews. Like hearing them just straight up say, it was kind of a pain in the ass to get mouse mode working on Switch 2 because we didn't even have any of the stuff we needed to be able to implement it until April. And it's like, oh, don't know why you're okay with sharing that, but good, neat information, I guess.
It's always good to get kind of
Nintendo.
like those really candid, honest answers about, this was the constraint we were working with that explains this and this and this. So yeah.
Yep.
So obviously we're past the 3-hour mark here. So every Nintendo Direct coverage podcast is a bit of a marathon. So the three of us that have made it to the end, both Chow and Mikhail, of course, thanks for their appearances on. They had to step out for other schedule things. We'll be not here next week, in all likelihood. So if you made it to the end, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Tetracast. Obviously, all of the news, the headlines from the Nintendo Direct, from the THQ Showcase, and the feature articles like that interview and the previews are all up on the site at rpgsite.net. If you've listened to this podcast to the end, on whatever podcast service of choice that you listen to us, or on the website itself, go ahead and leave us a like, leave us a rating. We'd love to see those. You can find RPG Site on all the social media networks. Just search for RPG Space Site and you should be able to find us. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. And we'll be back not next week, but in 2 weeks with another episode of the Tetracast. So as the summer begins to wind down, until you hear from us in 2 weeks, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you then.
Godspeed, Elliot.